I'll go over it. Two in my comments, then we'll have 5 public hearings in a row. Presentations, public hearing, presentation, public hearing, presentation, public hearing, presentation. Yeah, to get tonight's really about getting public input, so then you guys can.
Okay.
On all.
Got it. Work session tonight, later.
Yep.
Okay.
Yeah, no decisions, you don't need to make any decisions tonight, of course, but it's just opportunity for public input.
Okay.
So staff is here, so can we ask what? Yeah, but we're gonna. Staff presentation, public hearing, staff presentation, public hearing, so you guys would hold your questions until we're done with all 5, and then everything.
Then we adjourn, okay.
Yeah,
That's typical, Mark makes his way through everything, then.
right, time's up, right. All right. We've asked the staffs to make their presentations 10 to 15 minutes tops. So they should be quick.
Okay. Work just after 6. Good evening. The September 11th, 2025, Whatcom County Planning Commission meeting is called to order. Call the roll. Open Barton, I believe, I'm here. Red Brown?
Here.
Daniel Dunn?
Here.
Anita Eisenberg? Nicholas Stripe?
Might be coming in.
So. Very good.
Nicholas Stripe? Jim Hansen? Here. Julie Jefferson?
Here.
Scott Van
Right.
Dalen? Not here. Right,
Tommy,
sorry.
here.
Oh, God, thank you.
Kevin's not all with it.
All right, please join me for the flag salute. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Right. So time for department update. Director Mark Personio.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Just a quick note for everybody, on the protocol tonight. We're gonna, because we want to maximize opportunity for public input tonight. We've got, 5 UGA, proposals up for public hearing, so that's gonna be 5 different public hearings. We're gonna run them, sequentially, so we'll have the staff presentations, hopefully 10 or 15 minutes for each of those. Then the chair will open a public hearing, take public comment, close the hearing. When that public comment is done, go to the next city. Staff makes a presentation, open a public hearing, close the public hearing, so forth until we're done with all 5. So we're asking you to hold your questions until we're done with all 5 of them, and then we can engage. The staffs will remain here throughout the meeting, so they'll be available. Yeah, Jim.
So, we're postponing Blaine, is that correct?
Blaine requested, they requested to delay, they wanted to make some changes, so they are not, they've been removed from the agenda tonight, just so the public knows. If you don't know, Blaine UGA will not have a public hearing tonight. We've rescheduled them for October 9th. Your regular meeting, yeah, that one.
How come you're doing 5 different public hearings instead of going through all of them and do one at the end?
I'm not following you.
Typically we go, staff does all of the presentation, we have a public hearing at the end. You're doing 5 different ones.
Yeah.
Is there a reason for that, doing it differently?
Well, but just because there's specific, there are 5 different cities, or in this case, 5 different UGAs. So there are distinct issues, or folks might be from different neighborhoods or different cities and don't want to talk about city X, Y, or Z, but they do want to talk about city W, so.
Okay. Some of the issues are related, interrelated between the different UGAs though.
Yeah, and we can talk about that at the end, yeah. Okay, so that's just so everybody knows that we know Blaine, UGA, hearing tonight or proposal. But we'll start with Sumas, then Everson, then Nooksack, then Birch Bay, and then Columbia Valley. Just a quick note, commissioners, on schedules. tonight as we begin those EGA, proposal hearings and presentations. Those will continue at your next meeting on September 25th. Next week, next Tuesday is your special joint, meeting with the county council, to also finish the joint review you guys have been having on, the UGA proposals. That's, starting at 1 o'clock on next Tuesday down in council chambers. And then the 25th, we'll follow up with more, the rest of the cities, UGA proposals. And then on September 30th, we have the special meeting scheduled from 1 to 4 p.m. Eileen, is that here
Yes.
in this room? That's to finish your review of chapter 12, the climate element, and UGA, if time permits, additional UGA proposal, work session if you guys want to deliberate more on those proposals. October 9th will be the Blaine UGA proposal, and staff is also bringing, we have an open space application we need to process, need a recommendation on. Open space staff will be here for that, and then we'll have a review with you in public hearing on chapter 5 utilities. So that's what's upcoming in the next 4 meetings. I think that's all I got. Thank you.
When are we gonna be out, Bellingham, Ferndale?
September 25th.
25th?
Yep.
Okay, thank you.
Yep.
All right, thank you. I'm now with open session for public comment. Eileen, would you take over, please?
Yes. Welcome to the meeting. This meeting is being broadcast live. The audio is being recorded and will be posted to the county website. As noted on our website, members of the public may watch the meeting or join online or by phone. During the open public comment session, speakers may not speak to items that are scheduled on the agenda for a public hearing tonight. So that would be the UGA proposals for Sumas, Everson, Nooksack, Birch Bay, and Columbia Valley. So you may not speak to those during the open public comment session. If you would like to provide public comment at this time, we will take comments from those in the room first. Please come up to the podium and print your full name on the sign-up sheet. Would anyone in the room wish to speak at this time, not regarding the UGA proposals? You can come up, write your name on the sign-up sheet. You will be given 3 minutes.
I don't understand the rules, so you just tell me if I'm not following the rules. I'm Suzanne Cresswell, I live in Blaine, and I had a general question about UGA development, and that is, I'd be interested to know how the developers are held accountable for following through with the infrastructure. I'm particularly concerned about fire safety, but also flood, water intake. Is there enough water for everybody, and water outtake? Just in general, I guess, the process for, let's see, holding the developers accountable and having that information available to the public. Sure, that's okay, because I'm from Blaine. It's not a comment, it's question. Thank you so
Thank
much
you.
for all you do.
Anyone else in the room wish to speak at this time? Seeing no one in the room?
Wait a minute,
Yes.
she's confused. Well, so am I. Oh. And maybe what I want to talk about is something I can't talk about. Which means I'll sit down and shut up. After fallacy. Birch Bay. And one of my concerns, and maybe shouldn't redress this here, is Blaine's desire to annex areas for their growth management area on Birch Point. That's something we can talk about.
So Patrick, you might have missed it, but the Blaine UGA proposal is, Blaine asked for some more time. They wanted to make some changes to their proposal. So we've rescheduled that, public hearing until October 9th.
I'll be glad to come back October 9th.
The Birch Bay UGA hearing will be tonight.
Point of order.
We talk about Birch Bay, UGA.
If Blaine's not on our thing, can't he talk about it in the open comment then?
We can
Talk about it, right? You can comment on it. Yeah.
After the Birch Bay UGA, then we can comment on it.
Yeah, so in this case, what he wants to talk about is something that's not on our agenda
That's
for
right.
tonight.
Good.
And
Which-
so I'm in a rule that he can do that because he wants to talk
can
about
talk about-
Blaine. You can't talk about Birch Bay, but you can talk about
Oh,
Blaine.
I wasn't gonna talk about Birch Bay. Well,
We're talking about-
how can you talk about Blaine and not mention Birch?
Yeah, you can.
Because we're having a hearing on Birch Bay in a little bit.
So what I say about Birch Bay, just blank out. Okay? Here's an incorporation study.
I think.
It was inspired by the Mountain Review Board. And I'm sorry that I have to blank out the word. Okay? The interesting thing is that state is 89. So that goes way back when. And in here, it refers to the area that Blaine can't come down any further. That was Lincoln Road extended all the way to Birch, to the Birch Point there.
There we go.
Either one. Mark, I'm sorry, we're confused. I would like to also, I had signed up to talk about that I live in Birch Bay, but I want to talk about the Blaine UGA in Birch Bay. When do you want me to speak? Now, or do you want me to wait till after the,
Why don't you do it as a part of the Birch Bay?
that's what we thought, but we didn't want to.
Yeah,
Okay.
and that'd be great to keep it all in one
Awesome, thank you.
at the same time, yeah.
Anyone in the room wish to speak at this time? Seeing no one, I'm gonna move to the attendees online. As a reminder, this is the open public comment session. You may not speak to items regarding the public hearing tonight. I see Otto Pointer. Do you wish to speak at this time? Otto Pointer?
He has to get a muted. There he is.
I'm
Otto
sorry.
Pointer? Do you wish to speak at this time?
Okay, can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay, I'm sorry, I'm having some difficulty. Yes, my name is Otto Pointer. That's an alias for Jeff Baker. I work with the Blaine Water Coalition, soon to be called waterplanningmatters.org. I am one of the appellants in the SEPA appeal. Whatcom County is also in the SEPA appeal against the city of Blaine. Both of us are continuing with standing. There was an attempt by the city of Blaine to dismiss us. And we have also published today in Whatcom Watch, which I encourage you to read, the rule book that the City of Blaine Planning Commission follows. We've been doing extensive analysis on the PUD called the Vista, which extends also into Whatcom County. And we have very serious concerns about stormwater. We have very, very serious concerns about wetlands and the impact upon Birch Bay. Much of that is highlighted in the report. We have had tremendous problems with our PRA request. We had to go to Whatcom Superior Court, and unfortunately, because of procedural matters, I was dismissed, but I've now retained counsel. So we are now going to start to publish all of that information. We're having difficulty with Blaine actually publishing that information on their website. They refuse to do so, but I'm putting up a website shortly that all of you folks that are coming from Birch Bay and Blaine will have full opportunity to access the discovery of the information with respect of how water will be delivered to these new communities, if there's sufficient water capacity, issues and concerns about stormwater pollution going into Birch Bay and flooding, as well as wetlands, and very many other considerations such as traffic. So I just want to bring to your attention that we will be publishing that information. It's been held off, but we are getting that information through the hearing exam process, and we look forward to informing the constituents and the citizens of both Birch Bay and Blaine as they look at this UGA annexation proposal. Thank you very much for your time and consideration.
Thank you.
Julie Jefferson. Commissioner Jefferson, did you have a question?
No, my apologies.
Okay. Continue, Irene.
Anyone else attending online wish to speak at this time? Seeing no other hands, Chair?
Okay, let's move on to,
One moment, I'm sorry. Chuck Kinzer? Chuck Kinzer, do you wish to speak at this time?
Yep, sure, can you hear me?
Yes.
Oh, great. Anyway, yes, I was hoping to speak to the, Blaine UGA proposal, but let me just ask that whatever they repost be given in enough time for those of us who are interested to actually see it and read it. I'm a little bit concerned that there hasn't been a lot of information forthcoming, and it's disappointing that there's now apparently an error in their proposal. So I would like to see it, and I would like to see it with enough time to consider it and then talk about it at the October meeting. That's all. Thank you.
Thank you. Seeing no other hands, Chair?
I'm now for commissioner comments. Any commissioner comments? Seeing none, let's move on to approval of minutes, August 28th.
Chair, I just want to put on the record, Nicholas Greif joined at 6:15.
Okay, thank you.
Move approval of the minutes.
Second.
Okay, we have a motion, a second. Any additions or corrections? Seeing none, Eileen, would you call the roll, please?
Yes. Wasseri,
Yes.
Brown,
Yes.
Dunn,
Yes.
Greif,
Yes.
Hanson,
Yes.
Jefferson,
Abstain.
Barton,
Yes.
passes.
Okay, so time for the meeting topic, public hearing and work session. And Matt Amat, would you take over, please?
Yeah, this is Matt Ahmed representing Planning and Development. So we're just gonna go in the order of the agenda. So we're gonna start out with SUMAS, and I think Carson Cortez is here for that presentation. Carson?
Absolutely. Thank you. Can you guys hear me okay?
Yeah.
All right. Let me share my screen here real quick. Okay, is that coming through all right?
Yeah. Yep.
Okay. So my name is Carson Cortez. I'm the city planner for the city of Sumas. I believe I gave a presentation similar to this with most of the planning commissioners. Today I'm going to go through Sumas's urban growth area and UGA reserve proposal. So this is a map of Whatcom County. Sumas is in the northeast corner of the map and the Nooksack Valley, or the Nooksack River Valley. It's a small town on the border with a population of just over 1,800. So this is a map of Sumas's current UGA. We have an unincorporated urban growth area that is one parcel, about 26 acres. And it's owned by a local dairy farmer who uses the land to grow feed for his cows. And he, for years, has been uninterested in that property being annexed or developed in any way. He's had multiple developers approach him over the years. He's just not interested. And then just to the right of that is the UGA Reserve. Similar situation. The same dairy farmer owns a lot of that land as well. Also still very uninterested. His main base of operations is on the east side of that UGA reserve, so he's definitely not letting that get annexed. So that kind of presents a problem for Sumas because now we don't have any place for our city to grow. And currently we're running into a situation where we don't have much room left for any more residential growth. It's very scarce, and the land that we do have left, the developers try and buy, is not great land for development, but it's what's left. So we have to kind of come up with creative solutions to expand our city limits so that we can continue to have growth moving forward. So this is a map of Sumas's zoning. On the east side in yellow is the residential area. In the middle in red is our commercial corridor. And to the west in gray is our industrial district. Sumas's industrial district is about half the size of Sumas and provides a majority of the job base and the tax base for the city. So we really highlight the industrial district. So moving on to population growth allocation. So Sumas is proposing to add 1,000 people between 2023 and 2045. That's the same proposal number that was provided in the multi-jurisdictional resolution that was signed. We still think that this is a solid number for Sumas moving forward. But there is an issue when we start to talk about housing unit growth allocation. Sumas's housing unit growth allocation proposal is 643 units. If you think about the math of that, 643 units for 1,000 people, you have an average of like 1.5 people per household. It's a lot of units for our population growth proposal, but it was what was allocated to Sumas in using the Housing for All planning tool that was created by the state. So we're just going with that number. That's what was in the multi-jurisdictional resolution. So we're going to plan for that number. And then for employment, our employment allocation is 500 jobs over the course of 2023 to 2045. That's 50% jobs to the population. So this gives a rundown of, you don't have to read it, it's a lot of text. I'm going to move on to the next slide in a second, but this gives a rundown of the changes that we're proposing for the current UGA and UGA reserve. So those are visualized on this slide, which shows Sumas's full UGA and UGA reserve expansion proposal. There's a lot of stuff going on, so I'm going to kind of run through it. On the south side, area that's labeled number 1 is the current UGA. Areas labeled 2, 5, and 6 make up our current UGA reserve, and then 3 and 4 are extensions to the southward UGA. So the reason that area number 5 is hatched out like that is that that's UGA reserve that we want to remove, that we don't want anymore. Like I was saying earlier, that's where the local dairy farmers' main base of operations is, so we don't really want to touch that. So we're proposing to have that removed and then extended south along the highway, which is Sumas's main corridor for traffic, but also for commercial. So we want to continue that growth and then also provide housing on that side. And then to the west of town is Sumas's big westward expansion. There's several reasons why we want to expand to the west, but as this next map will show, the main reason is that Sumas is almost entirely within the Nooksack River floodplain, the reach that heads north into Canada, and that was made very obvious to everybody in the 2021 flood event when Sumas was hit on a very serious level, 5 feet of water in some places. So the westward expansion the priority is to move out of the floodplain, or at least direct future growth out of the floodplain. And the reason that a lot of this area is outside of the floodplain is because the farther west you go, the higher in elevation it gets, it's a hillside, so it's you very quickly get out of the floodplain, but you need to go through a little bit of floodplain to get out there. Now that causes an issue with the Growth Management Act because the Growth Management Act says that any UGA cannot expand its floodplain or cannot expand its UGA into floodplain. There are very specific exceptions to that rule, and SUMAS is pursuing one of those exceptions. That exception being that either the city owns the land that's in the floodplain or that land's development rights have been permanently extinguished. So that's the path that we're pursuing. We're talking with property owners. And we think that it's going to be a good deal for the property owners, even if the development rights are extinguished, because the land is already used for agriculture, and it would just get roped into our open space agriculture zone. So there wouldn't be development there anyway. But the main priority is to get to that farther west area labeled Area 8 on this map. That's where we're proposing a majority of our population growth. It's a little hilly, but it's wooded and not really used for agricultural purposes that are of long-term commercial significance. A lot of it's residential with large lots for hobby farms. It's not huge commercial agricultural operations. So of all the places around SUMAS for us to grow, that is the best option, even though it's zoned ag, which presents the other issue, is that when you're trying to expand UGA into areas that are zoned agricultural resource lands, you have to de-designate it, and there's specific de-designation criteria that you have to hit. And SUMAS hits part of those, but not all of them. And but we're going to continue to work with the county to see what we can do, because everything around SUMAS is zoned agriculture resource lands. So if we're not able to get into that at all, then we're just left without any place for SUMAS to grow ever again. And that's not really a fair scenario. And I don't think it's one that the county really wants to do. So we're going to try and work with the county to come up with a solution. So this is another slide that gives a rundown on all of those UGA expansion areas. So now we're going to get into capacity of those areas to hold future population, future employment, and future housing. In the UGA proposal document that I submitted to the county, and that was, I believe, in your agenda packets, the capacity numbers were a lot different. We had a surplus of about 430 something, I believe. And the county had some real concerns about that they sent to us in an email that was provided to you guys. And we sat down with the county and we talked about solutions. And one of the solutions that we discussed is possibly looking at getting rid of all of the UGA expansion that we were looking at doing in the south and just focusing on the west. That's not something that we've officially changed yet. We haven't brought it to council yet, but I do have sign off from the mayor. So it's looking fairly good that we're going to go in that direction. So for the purpose of these slides, I've amended the land capacity numbers to include that change in our UGA proposal. And then I also worked on the land capacity analysis tool. There was some inherent assumptions in terms of zoning and densities and stuff like that were driving our population surplus up. So worked on that and got it to a more realistic number, which is a surplus of 128 people. That's about 12 or 13% above our proposal, but it was the lowest we could get it without starting to dip into an issue with our housing. So I'm going to move on to housing capacity next. So this is a breakdown of.
Can you hold just for a minute? Matt,
Yes.
We're having a Columbia Valley slide up there on the screen.
Oh, no, sorry, that's me. It's SUMAS. I just forgot to change the name up top.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, sorry about that.
Thanks.
So this is Sumas's housing capacity with the UGAs included, or with the proposed UGAs included. The issue here is that we have to break down our housing capacity by income band, so low income, moderate income, and high income. The way the land capacity analysis tool worked is that it assigned certain income brackets to certain kinds of housing, like low or single family was high income and apartments were low income. That's not always the case. And a lot of the times it's a mix of all of the above. So we had to work with the land capacity analysis tool to kind of provide a mix of densities for each zone and a mix of income bands. And that brought us to a much more realistic number where we just have a total surplus of 11 units at the end of the day. And then another thing I wanted to highlight is that we have a population surplus of 120 people, but a housing supply surplus of 11 units. So there just seems to be some sort of mix up with the way the land capacity analysis tool works, because we're getting different results that don't really match each other. Anyway. And then last is employment. Part of SUMAS's proposal is that the area of the westward expansion south of Halverstick Road would be added to our industrial district as future industrial growth. And that plus the current UGA, which would be commercial, helps to provide us with our 500 jobs. Our capacity, we end up with a surplus of 9 extra jobs on top. So lastly, I just wanted to run through the concerns that were listed in Whatcom County's email to SUMAS. I discussed the population land capacity and the housing land capacity. We amended those. They're in a much better spot, but there were other concerns. Sewer plan, naturally occurring asbestos, floodplain, I talked about a little bit. Agricultural land, I talked about a little bit. And setbacks from ag lands. All of this will be covered in much more detail in an addendum document to our UGA proposal document that is still being worked on. So we will respond to all of these concerns in that document. Besides that, that is the end of my presentation.
I will open the public hearing. Will you take over, please?
Yes. As stated before, we're doing 5 different public hearings. This one will be on the city of Sumas UGA. Is there anyone in the room that wishes to speak at this time? Seeing no one, I'm moving to the attendees online. Anyone wish to speak on the Sumas UGA proposal? Seeing no hands, Chair.
I'll close the public hearing. Would you introduce our next guest presenter?
Yeah, we have Alex Putnam from the city of Everson.
Hi, can you guys hear me all right?
All good?
Yeah.
All right. Let me pull this up. All right. Hi, I'm Alex Putnam. I'm the city planner for Everson, and I will be presenting the UGA proposal for Everson. Everson's located in northeast Whatcom County. The estimated 2025 population is 3,245 people. We're a very fast-growing city. We have recently experienced a significant amount of development in the last 2 years. And the city has really become an area for those seeking more affordable housing and, a small town lifestyle. And here are the current city limits and UGA boundaries for Everson. We have several UGAs surrounding town, but many of these are within floodplains that are not ideal for development, and I'll get into that a little later. Our last 2 annexations have been on this west side of town, west of the river, which is outside of the floodplain, and that's the goal of Everson is to really continue that movement west of the river to avoid any development in the floodplain. So earlier this year, we passed that multi-jurisdictional resolution that set the 22-year population growth allocation at 1,408 people for Everson. The city is continuing to use this number that was passed in this resolution for our growth proposal. And our housing growth proposal for the multi-jurisdictional resolution, 610. We're going with that same number for our growth proposal. And for employment, our allocation was 602, and we're sticking with that same number for our growth proposal. So our UGA reserve proposal can really be broken down into 3 separate sections. At the end of this, I'll be showing a map, and I can also always go back to that during the work session or any questions anybody has. But these can be broken down into UGA additions, UGA reserve additions, and UGA removals. For our UGA additions, we're proposing to add 3 different areas to the UGA. The first is an area currently within our UGA reserve. And while it is zoned agriculture, it's not a part of the agricultural land base in the county because it's currently in our UGA reserve. And it is 15.7 acres approximately. Our second area that we're proposing is a 34-acre area located northwest of the current city limits, this on the west side of the bridge, and this property is zoned agriculture. And the last area we would like to add to our UGA is a 20-acre parcel located west of the city limits, west side of the bridge, and it's currently zoned rural. And all of these UGA additions will have or are proposed to have a future zoning of residential. And for our UGA reserve, we're proposing 2 additions. The first area is approximately 42 acres and located north of current city limits. The other area is approximately 39 acres and located east of city limits. Both of these areas are still west of the river outside of that floodplain. And both of these areas are zoned as agriculture. For our UGA removals, we're proposing to remove 4 separate areas. The first being the removal of approximately 12 acres from our current UGA reserve back into county agriculture. Our second area is approximately 19 acres and is located northwest of the city limits. Our third area is approximately 17 acres, again, located west of city limits. And our last removal proposal, removal proposal is approximately 18 acres and located north of city limits. All of these proposed removals are zoned agriculture and currently located either in the floodplain or the floodway and are just really not suitable for development at all. In total, we are proposing a UGA addition of approximately 70 acres, but only 34 of those acres would be agricultural land, which is less than our proposed UGA removal that would be added back into the county of 65 acres. However, when you factor in the UGA reserve proposal, this does add an additional 81 acres into agriculture land. However, these UGA reserve properties are expected to continue agriculture operations until they would be added into the UGA in the future. And here's a map of that. So the green areas represent the proposed UGA additions. Red is our removals and yellow is the UGA reserve. And the orange boxes are our current UGA boundaries. And I can also go back to this later. So ever since land capacity for the EIS showed that the existing UGA showed a deficit in residential capacity, and also when considering our UGA proposal, I would just like to highlight again that there has been a significant increase in development that's occurring in Everson. using the current, ongoing, and future projects, which I have a table on the slide here, the city is expected to reach the 22-year growth allocation of 1,408 people in the next 10 to 12 years. And that table also does not include applications that I've received since making that table. So just something to keep in mind. So for our UGA expansion from our UGA reserve, Everson has removed the northern portion of that current UGA reserve to ensure that northern floodplain is not brought in. This northern portion, like I had mentioned, will be added back into the county agricultural land base. And I just want to note that this UGA reserve has been included in our ongoing water system and sewer plan updates. We're currently working on them, and they are going to be adopted prior to the adoption of our comp plan. So, like many of the cities here, Everson has the Nooksack River floodplain. It's predominantly present in the eastern portion of town, but does go a little bit into the west. All of these UGA and UGA reserve expansion boundaries have been curated to not include any effective floodplain. However, there is one very small portion of the proposed UGA addition to the current UGA reserve that has a really small encroachment of the effective floodway. This encroachment is approximately 3,000 square feet and is located in the southeast corner of the property. The only reason this portion is included in the proposal is due to the location of it. It's located right at the intersection of city limits and would create a hole in city limits if it were to be removed. In order to comply with the GMA, the city is proposing that development restrictions be put in place on this portion of land prior to the expansion of this UGA. And we've already begun to prepare a restrictive covenant that will be signed by the property owner to ensure no development can happen on this portion of land. And here are the maps that the county prepared for us to show our UGA boundaries, overlaid with the effective and draft maps. The effective map is on the left of the slide and the draft is on the right side. So UGA expansions and resource lands, Everson is almost completely surrounded by agricultural land. So this proposal does include expansions into ag land. To mitigate this, the city is proposing to remove portions of our current UGA and add it back into the county ag land. This means 65 acres would be added back into county ag land, and the city will be removing 34 acres. This is a net addition of 31 acres of ag land back into the county. However, bringing that UGA reserve into the equation, there would be a loss of 49 acres. The city is proposing that the owners of these properties be required to make a payment in lieu into the County Conservation Futures Fund, or whichever fund that the county would like, to help retire development rights. We're still working to determine the mechanism on how this will be achieved. Everson does support the county's goal to maintain 100,000 acres of ag land. After looking over the county's criteria for de-designation of ag land, we have concluded that these UGA proposals predominantly fall in line with the de-designation for several reasons. Just to summarize, all these UGAs are located along either a state highway or a major arterial. They all currently abut city limits and are adjacent to city utilities. There's currently a sewer lift station that is being designed right next to one of the proposed UGAs. And also the parcel sizes surrounding these areas are generally not consistent with agriculture designation. Here is our current land capacity results for population. As you can see, these initial results show that we have a surplus of population. I think it's important to note that when doing this land capacity analysis, the city must comply with HB 1220, which stipulates that the city must accommodate for lower income housing. The state has provided a mechanism for calculating these housing needs, and using this mechanism in the LCA tool, our current housing unit requirement results in a population need that is 33% higher than what we've been allocated in the multi-jurisdictional resolution. So this is why our capacity is so high right now, because we do have to comply with showing that we have adequate enough low-income housing and different types of housing. And here is that land capacity results for housing. We have a surplus for all three income brackets. As I mentioned, these are reflective of our compliance with HB 1220. We are still working through this land capacity analysis to figure out how we are going to comply with this bill while also trying to reduce our surplus capacity. And we anticipate that we'll be able to reduce some of this surplus capacity. And here's our land capacity for employment. We do have a surplus. However, we're not looking to expand any of our commercial into these UGA proposals. This is just a surplus that exists within current city limits. So some concerns that the county raised, which was in an email that I believe is in your guys's packet, was regarding our land capacity surplus, setbacks and buffering from ag lands, inclusion of floodplain, floodway into UGA, and our mechanism regarding agricultural mitigation. I've addressed all these concerns in this presentation, and the city is planning on preparing a formal addendum to our UGA proposal to further address these concerns. And this concludes my presentation. Roland Harper and I are on the call to answer any questions or explain anything. And thank you. I appreciate you listening, taking the time to listen to our proposal.
And Alex, we're going to come back to you with questions in a bit, but right now I'm going to open the public hearing. Would you take over, please?
Yes. So this public hearing is for the Everson UGA. Would anyone in the room wish to speak at this time? Seeing no one in the room wishing to speak at this time, we'll move online. Are there any attendees that wish to speak on the Everson UGA proposal? Seeing no hands, Chair.
We'll close the public hearing.
All right, so next we have,
Introduce our next presenter.
we have Holly Hamilton for Nooksack.
Can you see my screen okay?
Yep.
Right. Okay, good evening. My name is Holly Hamilton for the city of Nooksack. I'll be presenting the urban growth area and reserve proposal this evening for the city. The city of Nooksack, one moment. The city of Nooksack is located in west central Whatcom County, northeast of Everson, and approximately 18 miles from Bellingham. The current city boundary covers an area of 580 acres, is bisected by State Highway 9, which runs north and south, and Highway 544, which runs along its southern boundary east and west. Nooksack is similarly currently experiencing a boom in population growth as with Everson to its south. Its population has increased by 260 people in the past 2 years. The estimated population for 2025 is 1,825. The average age is 30. This map provided by the county shows the current urban growth area. It's in darker gray, and then urban growth area reserve is in crosshatched. This slide shows Nooksack's current zoning within the urban growth area, study areas that we had been looking at. You can see the numbering, as well as the county's mineral resource lands. There is one residential zone district at the present time in Nooksack with lot sizes at approximately 9,600 square feet. In 2015, Nooksack created a subzone which allowed for smaller lot sizes of 8,600 square feet. Can you hear me okay?
Yep.
Okay. Nooksack has a central market district and commercial and light industrial zones. It also has agricultural urban lands and public use zoning within the municipal boundary. With the city council's approved non-binding multi-jurisdictional resolution earlier this year, Nooksack's proposal is consistent with the resolution of 995 additional people for the 22-year planning period. For housing growth of 433 additional units over the comprehensive plan period, it's also consistent with the resolution. And similarly, our proposal for employment growth of 232 additional jobs over the same planning period aligns with the multi-jurisdictional resolution, which was a significant increase over the medium and high proposed earlier proposals. This is a summary of our reserve urban growth area and urban growth area reserve proposal. We recommend the following areas be considered. For area 3, this is currently a reserve. It's a 30-acre parcel. We would recommend changing it to an urban growth area and zoned light industrial. For area 4, it's at the northeast municipal boundary. It's a 20-acre area, has 6 lots, is currently zoned rural, and would be rezoned residential infill. Area 6 at the northern city boundary. This area is 7 acres of existing agricultural land with proposed commercial zoning, future commercial zoning. Area 7 includes 2 parcels which are less than 2 acres total and have existing farming residents. The lots are zoned agriculture and proposed zoning would be residential with infill. Area 8 at the northwest boundary along Tom Road, which is in the upper left corner, contains vacant residential and farm buildings. The current zoning is agriculture, and the owner is proposing to relocate a community church to the property. The combined total of these areas is 88 acres approximately. This larger slide shows the comp plan proposed changes to the urban growth area, the reserve, and zoning. It also shows the current effective FEMA flood mapping. The proposed changes and additions are largely outside of the flood zones, with the exception of study area number 8, which will be addressed in the last slide. Similarly, we've identified the point, it's a quarter acre, less than a quarter acre that is in the floodplain. And we've discussed preparing a restrictive covenant for that particular lot rather than chunk it out for the purposes of this discussion at very least. The second slide shows the same proposed changes to the urban growth area and reserve with the draft FEMA flood mapping overlaid. We thought it was important to provide this slide because the city has been strategic in identifying areas of expansion that are largely outside of the proposed flood hazard areas, and you can see them identified throughout. So the rationale for expansion. For area number 3, the requested change from urban reserve to urban growth area and zoning to light industrial supports needed employment growth. This portion of a larger lot was previously removed from Whatcom County's agricultural land base. The lot is elevated above Breckenridge Creek in the floodplain, and it has a natural corridor to the north with riparian setbacks already required. The property is also east of Sumas River and the main Swift Creek sediment deposition area. So it's outside of any area that is affected by the asbestos, naturally occurring asbestos. Area number 4, 20 acres. That's that area on the eastern side. It's out of the floodplain, adjacent to the elementary school, and is served by municipal water and sewer. And the area is earmarked for residential infill that is higher density than what is existing. For area number 6, that's 7 acres. We apportioned of the existing agricultural land. These lots have frontage along Highway 9 and are earmarked for commercial use to support economic development. The proposed area is out of the floodplain, has municipal services available, and the majority of the parcel to the west will remain in agricultural production. Last, for areas 7 and 8, while the lots are zoned as county agricultural land, they're either occupied by existing farm residences, or in the case of area number 8, the parcel has vacated, dilapidated farm and residential buildings that are better served for development, and the owner's intention to relocate a community church to the property. So the land capacity analysis indicates that the proposed Nooksack urban growth area can accommodate the population growth projection shown above. Similar to Sumas and to Everson, we were challenged by the efficacy of the land capacity analysis tool. So we did our best to correctly represent our plans for the community and address housing 1220, HB 1220. So again, wanting to acknowledge that the growth for the last 2 years is 260 people. Based on pending developments, we have another 140 population growth forthcoming. So for 23 to 2027, we've gained at least 40% of our total growth allocated. So. The preliminary land capacity analysis indicates that the proposed Nooksack UGA can accommodate the anticipated housing growth projections through revising zones within the UGA to accept higher density residential, mixed use, as well as planning for the addition of accessory dwelling units. These revisions support Nooksack in satisfying the requirements of state housing initiatives and new legislation. Similarly, we're going to be working with the land capacity tool to address that higher surplus in the 120 plus income bracket. The preliminary land capacity analysis indicates that the revised Nooksack UGA can support the proposed employment growth with the potential rezone of 37 acres to commercial and light industrial. This last slide, Roland would like to speak to the county's memorandum regarding Nooksack's urban growth proposal. So I'll turn it over to him. And if you have any questions after that, we'll stay available to you. Thanks so much for listening.
All right. Thank you, Holly. This is Roland Harper, Sea Home Planning, a longtime city planner for the city of Nooksack, and really appreciate the work that Holly's done on that proposal. As she mentioned, we did receive an email from Matt Ahmet at the county, and their review of the city's UGA proposal. They wanted to highlight some potential concerns. And so, as was stated by the other small communities, we intend to address these fully in a UGA proposal addendum that would be forthcoming. We'll get that into the record. I'd also note that there's a couple of comments, written comments, that were just received by the county from the Whatcom Environmental Council and FutureWise. So we are aware of these comments and also intend to fully respond to those. But if I could just highlight a couple of items in response. We are working as best we can with this land capacity analysis tool. It was very interesting what Alex from Everson said about doing the simple math, that there's a disconnect between the Housing for All planning tool allocation, in the case for Nooksack, of 433 units, which equates to a population growth of 1,300 based on people per household, as compared to our requested population growth of 995. So there's one number coming in, it's 995, and the tool is spitting out 1,300. So this is part of what is driving, as Holly said, and Alex did, this is part of what's driving the surplus in our existing land capacity. But we are working through that tool to see if there's ways to comply with the HB 1220, as well as bringing down our surplus. But the tool is created to make that mathematically impossible. Okay, the county had identified a couple of concerns that were related to the UGA reserve. setbacks in the reserve from county agricultural lands. And I would note that the UGA reserve that we are proposing to convert to UGA, it's proposed to be used for light industry. I have not received any concerns in my 20+ years working with Nooksack that identifies concerns between agriculture and light industry. In fact, in the small communities, we really haven't seen a lot of issues related to conflicts. But we have adopted a right to farm ordinance that requires notification of proximity. And I think we'd be willing to work with the county to incorporate increased setbacks, if appropriate, from light industry to the adjacent agriculture. There's also a concern about the proximity of naturally occurring asbestos in relation to the UGA reserve. As Holly mentioned, the UGA reserve is upland. It is primarily well above the floodplain where the naturally occurring asbestos would be carried. So that alone, we would say, mitigates the risk to an acceptable level. The only exception to this is where the naturally occurring asbestos carried through the Sumas River floodplain might enter Breckenridge Creek along the northern boundary of the UGA reserve. This area is a steep bank that goes down to the creek. And I do not see the likelihood of any risk of people working in a light industrial area going down a steep slope to then expose themselves to naturally occurring asbestos, which is only a risk when it's encountered in its dry form or when it's handled inappropriately. So there's very low risk there that we would suggest as far as the UGA reserve conversion. Let's see. There is a one spot in area number 8 where the mapping of this 2-acre property apparently clips a little bit of the Nooksack River floodplain. And there is the provisions in the GMA that you cannot expand UGAs into a floodplain of certain rivers. So Nooksack will pursue one of two solutions. Either we will clip the part of this small 2-acre property so that it's not included in the proposal, or we'll work with the property owner to have a restrictive covenant in place. In any case, the risk based on the proximity of the floodplain is very low at this location. By definition, the edge of the floodplain, the levels of the floodwaters is 0. So these would be very, very shallow water issues. But to comply with the GMA, we will either clip it or put the covenant on it. Finally, there's the concern raised by the county about agricultural mitigation. And I would note that the whole proposal is only 11 acres of ag land. In 2016, the city gave back, over 40 acres of ag land back into the land base that was previously in the city's UGA or UGA reserve. So you might say that we have some credit, but in any case, this is 11 acres. There's 2 1-acre parcels that don't qualify in any way to be agriculturally zoned, except because of their proximity in a larger area. There's the 2-acre church site, which is already occupied by buildings that are all run down or impervious areas. And then beyond that, there's 7 acres that's adjacent to the city limits. None of the parcels around that area are larger than 40 or equal to or larger than 40 acres. However, the city is willing to work with the county to require payments in lieu to provide mitigation for adding this into the city's UGA and then using those payments to help retire development rights and work out the timing so that logistically those monies can be paid and do the good work of retiring development rights as the Conservation Futures Program would suggest. All right, that's all for me. I appreciate the extra time.
Does anyone have any questions for either myself or Roland?
But we'll get those during the work session at the end.
We'll open the public hearing. Go ahead.
Right. This is for Nooksack UGA. Anyone in the room wish to speak on this topic? Seeing no one in the room wishing to speak on this, we'll move to the attendees online. Anyone online that wishes to speak on the Nooksack UGA proposal? Seeing no hands, Chair.
Hey, we'll close the public hearing.
Eileen, could you take that slide down then?
Yes.
Good, that's like go to the.
And go ahead, Matt. Take
Okay.
over. Birch Bay.
Okay. Okay, so for the record, my name is Matt Ahmet, representing Planning and Development Services. The box here. I'll be presenting the county's UGA proposal for the Birch Bay this evening. Okay, so the Birch Bay UGA is located in northwest Whatcom County between the Blaine UGA and the Cherry Point UGA. And Birch Bay is historically developed with year-round homes, seasonal homes, resort and recreational uses, and businesses. And the estimated 2023 population is 8,908. So this map shows the current urban growth area in gray and the UGA reserve in crosshatching. There are currently 6 zoning districts in the UGA. We've got resort commercial, or RC on the screen, general commercial, neighborhood commercial, urban residential 4 units per acre, UR4, urban residential medium density 6 units per acre, that's the URM6, and the urban residential medium density 24 units per acre, which is right there. So the County Council approved the non-binding multi-jurisdictional resolution that we've been talking about tonight. The current proposal for Birch Bay population growth of 2,662 additional people over the planning period, which runs from 2023 to 2045, is consistent with that resolution passed by the council in March. And we got to that number basically extrapolating the annual average population growth in the UGA between 2013 and 2023 to the new planning period. So it basically equates to a growth of about 121 people per year through 2045, consistent with the growth in the last 10 years. The current proposal for Birch Bay housing growth of 1,051 additional units over the planning period is also consistent with the resolution. And this, again, comes from a Housing for All planning tool that was developed by the state and modified by the county's consultant. The current proposal for Birch Bay employment growth of 450 additional jobs over the planning period is also consistent with the resolution. Birch Bay had 3.8% of the countywide population in 2023, but only about 0.5% of the countywide jobs. And the Birch Bay Community Plan supports increased job opportunities in the UGA. So this employment allocation was selected to kind of support opportunities for businesses to locate in the UGA. Okay, so we've got for the UGA boundary, there's no changes. UGA reserve, 2 areas would be added, totaling 266 acres. The zoning text countywide would be amended to allow duplex, triplex, and fourplex in the UR4 zone. And then there's also a go-kart track parcel north of Birch Bay Linden Road and kind of narrow strips of land to the north and east, about 13 acres total, that would be rezoned from URM6 to general commercial to recognize that existing use. Also, Birch Bay State Park, approximately 187 acres would be rezoned from URM6 to recreation and open space to kind of reflect the existing use. And then we would also include rezoning about 100 acres in the existing UGA reserve and about 55 acres in the proposed UGA reserve from R5A to R10A. Okay, so this slide shows the comp plan and zoning map changes. And as mentioned, there's no changes to the existing UGA boundary. There would be 2 new urban growth area reserves of about 266 acres that would be added to the east side of the UGA, and that's right here, and right here. And Birch Bay Water and Sewer District had done a sewer study to look at least cost areas for expansion. It was more expensive, you know, up here and kind of medium here, and then was least expensive in this area. The Birch Bay Community Advisory Committee had recommended expanding the UGA kind of over in this area. And so we kind of recognized that under GMA, there's probably not a rationale to expand the UGA. So kind of in the spirit of the advisory committee recommendations, we recommended UGA reserve instead. Okay, and then the go-kart parcel is right here. And with those two narrow strips adjacent, that'd be about 13 acres going from URM6 to GC, and it's adjacent to an existing general commercial. And then the Birch Bay State Park is right here. And then also we would note that about 100 acres in the existing UGA reserve, which is right here, and then 55 acres in the proposed UGA reserve, which is right here, would be rezoned from R5A to R10A. And kind of the reason for that is the comp plan, the county comp plan states that in these UGA reserves, which would be considered for future addition to the urban growth area, maybe at the next update, we don't want a whole bunch of houses, or excuse me, 5-acre lots with a house in the middle that make it difficult to redevelop at urban densities once they're added to the UGA at some point. And the cities brought this up probably 10 or 15 years ago. They had some R5A, you know, around their cities or UGAs, and people were building, you know, subdividing down to 5-acre lots, building large houses in the middle. And so that's been a kind of a long discussion. Okay, so the land capacity analysis indicates the existing UGA can accommodate the proposed population growth as shown. And again, no UGA expansions are needed. Preliminary land capacity analysis also indicates the UGA as it exists now can accommodate the housing with amendments to the UR4 zone to allow duplex, triplex, and fourplex development. You know, that middle housing for middle incomes. And then the LCA land capacity analysis indicates the UGA can accommodate the proposed employment growth. All right, so that ends our presentation, and we'll do questions later. So
I'll open the public hearing.
Eileen, can you take that down so I can get my next one up? No, I guess I can do it.
All right.
And Eileen, would you take over?
Yes. So this public hearing will be on the Birch Bay UGA. We will start with those in the room first. I have Sherman Burnham. You'll be given 3 minutes to speak. I will share my screen. Please state your name for the record.
Hi, my name is Sherman Burnham, and I live in the beautiful community of Birch Bay, Washington. I'm here on behalf of the residents who will be directly impacted by Blaine's proposal to de-annex land at East Blaine in order to annex Birch Point. Land that was originally part of the Birch Bay UGA until it was removal in 2004, despite our community opposition. That opposition remains today, grounded in our commitment to protecting Birch Bay's bluffs, aquifers, and the waters of Birch Bay. This department is tasked with guiding growth through the comprehensive plan and the UGA review, ensuring decisions are transparent, coordinated with city plans, and compliant with the Growth Management Act. Blaine's annexation request must be evaluated against these standards. Your RCW 3670A140 requires early and continuous participation, yet the Birch Bay Community Advisory Committee, created and appointed by this county to ensure our community has a voice, has not been adequately engaged in this proposal. That is a failure of process and a breach of trust. RCW 3670A110 requires UGA changes be based on land capacity and infrastructure analysis. If East Blaine poses challenges, that does not justify annexing Birch Point. Where is the analysis showing this change meets growth targets and infrastructure needs? Your RCW 3678-210 requires UGA changes align with the county-wide planning policies. Birch Bay is already a designated UGA, and this department knows our community is evaluating incorporation. Allowing Blaine to annex Birch Point now would strip Birch Bay of land and future tax base before we even have a chance to incorporate. That undermines fairness, good governance, and the very purpose of UGAs. If these protocols are bypassed, this decision would be challenged under RCW 3678-280 before the Growth Management Hearings Board. But rather than risk that, the Planning Department has the opportunity to uphold integrity and ensure this process is done right. I urge you to formally engage the Birch Bay Community Advisory Community and the Birch Bay residents. Require full land capacity, fiscal and environmental analysis, and provide genuine opportunities for public input before any recommendation moves forward. We all want growth that is sustainable and fair, but growth that ignores process and silences communities is neither. Please protect the integrity of the comprehensive plan and give Birch Bay the voice we're promised. Thank you for your time. I do have handouts.
Thank you for your comment.
Sure. Thanks.
I have Lisa Guthrie.
Commissioners, thank you for your time tonight. My name is Lisa Guthrie. I'm a lifetime resident of Whatcom County and a resident of Birch Bay urban growth area for the last 20 years. I'm a past president of the Birch Bay Chamber of Commerce. I've been active in several community groups, including the Birch Bay Steering Committee, the group who was responsible for drafting the Birch Bay Community Plan back in 2004. I'm currently part of the group We Are Birch Bay, who are exploring incorporation in an effort to determine if it is time for us to self-govern as a city. The residents of Birch Bay will be tremendously affected by any growth that occurs in the current West Blaine UGA ask or Birch Point, and others will speak to serious flaws in the UGA proposal, at least the one we have seen to date. Obviously, they're not here tonight. What we have found, our group, in speaking with and surveying residents of Birch Bay over the last 2.5 years, we have received over 2,000 responses and comments. And the highest priority and level of concerns that are relayed to us is a desire for local control over land use decisions, concern over traffic and transportation impacts, stormwater management, and preservation of ecologically sensitive areas, such as the Birch Bay watershed or Birch Point. Our most precious resource is Birch Bay itself. So I was going to go on to some more about Blaine, but since they're not here tonight, I guess we just want to keep up with what Blaine is planning, what they're asking for. Every version that's been published, there's modifications and additions. The one that was just published in the EIS has now increased to 999 acres of Birch Point, the Birch Bay watershed. So while eventually these might be problems for a city of Birch Bay, today this is a problem for Whatcom County. We're Whatcom County residents under your jurisdiction and governance. So we ask that it be considered the ramifications for both Birch Bay and mitigating the impacts of Blaine's expansion plans. Please delay and give our residents time to make an informed decision to protect our precious Birch Bay. Thank you.
Thank you for your comment. Jan Barnes.
Well, just a moment. Go ahead.
Just a point of privilege, I would also be interested in Birch Bay residents commenting on the UGA expansion proposal that's presented here, as well as their concerns about Blaine.
Yep.
Yeah. Next we have Jan Barnes.
Yeah. Mine will be brief. I'm not as well prepared because as these two young ladies have been, but thank you for the time to address the council tonight and the group. I'm just representing a lot of the community of Birch Bay. I'm a resident full-time since 2018, living there since 2005 as a temporary vacation weekender. But my concern is the involvement, of the advisory committee, which was formed in February, which seems like a really short window to get feedback for this. There are a lot more people. I think the advisory committee is new and getting established. It needs to have a greater reach to the general population and the residents. Also the voting and the non-voting residents of Birch Bay, which is the future of our community, impacts all of those. And we are responsible for the small group that will actually have a vote for our incorporation to impact everybody. My concern is having enough voice to share our feedback with the county in the channels that are given us. I know it's always a challenge for everyone to, I didn't know about this meeting, I didn't hear about that, I think everyone means well, but we do have a dedicated group of citizens that really care a lot and want to partner with the county to drive UGA toward the ideal solutions that meet your needs and us as county members and our needs as residents of Birch Bay, which have a very unique setting within the county. That's what I'd like to say. Thank you.
Thank you for your comment. Ruth Danielson.
I'm gonna have to talk really fast. Hey, I'm Ruthie Danielson. I lived at 4506 Bay Road for the last 43 years and have been a resident of the Birch Bay area for 45. I also worked at the BP Cherry Point Refinery, so my employment was in that area. I was surprised when I was reading the EIS when it came out just the other day that they were proposing adding additional 2 UGA reserves, since at a prior meeting of the Birch Bay Advisory Committee, Matt was there and had said that there would be no changes, but I didn't actually specify reserves. So there's no changes to the UGA, but he added 2 reserves. Well, my property is in one of those reserves. So, and I read the proposal in detail, that not what he just gave here, but what was in the EIS. And, he used 3 different logics for why to include it. One, he thought it was logical that the Birch Bay urban area is likely to grow in that direction. I don't agree with that, but okay. 2, the 2019 study from the Birch Bay Water and Sewer District on public sewer service was, of the 3 alternatives they provided, I've got it in here, was alternate 1 was the cheapest alternative for them. Not necessarily the cheapest alternative for the people that own the property that might be required to hook up to that sewer, but cheapest for them. And then 3, that the recommendations from the Birch Bay Community Advisory Committee that they had just sent. So first, I don't think it's logical expansion to say that the property is gonna, people in that property area, it's gonna move to the north or to the south, sorry. On expansion, and I went to every single one of the property owners in that area and I asked them door to door, face to face. Said, hey, did you know this was happening? No. Would you like to be included in the UGA reserve for Birch Bay? And of the 9 property owners, including myself, 6 of them said absolutely not. 2 of them I couldn't get a hold of. One is a Canadian owner. The other is an absentee owner. I think there's 30 acres. And 1 person said, yeah, they'd be interested. So that was, so anyway. And it also appears a large portion of the proposed land is on wetlands. All of that area is wetlands. I have little finches that nest there all spring. I have heron that come into the fields, and it's on your maps, wetlands. So I'm surprised that you would think of expanding growth into that area. I don't find that logical. The second justification concerning Birch Bay Water and Sewer, again, I mentioned earlier, I don't think it's a cost option that would be great for us. Nobody was thrilled about it. I have water. I have a good septic system. I wouldn't be wanting to do it. And third, the Birch Bay Community Advisory Committee. Do I gotta stop? No, we just got a little bit more.
Commissioner Masseri.
Am I able to ask a question?
Yes.
How come you don't want to be in the UGA reserve?
Because I don't want the land developed. And if I had ever won the lottery, I'd buy up that land so it wouldn't be developed. It's beautiful green space. Birch Bay is a resort community. It used to have 4,000 people, 2,000 people there. And now a lot of those houses that were existing have been, people live there full time. So the population has increased. There's been a few developments in the area, but not a lot. Whisper Lake is the latest one that the county went ahead and approved. And so it's what the county approves. It's like this. You're saying, okay, it's probably gonna go this way. It's like, no, I want to get on the Smucker's jar. I'm gonna live there for 30 more years. I want to turn 100 there. And so, no, I don't want urban life. That's why I live out in the Birch Bay area, right? I like rural. I like critters. I don't mind the coyotes, right? And most of the people there enjoy that. So that's why. But the Birch Bay Community Advisory Committee, they just got started and they actually don't represent a lot of us, the tweeners, the ones that are outside of the UGA. So, right, if we're outside of the UGA, they're kind of focused on what's happening inside the UGA, but what happens in the UGA affects us. So they haven't communicated this stuff very well. And we always feel weird when we go there. So anyway.
I just want to let you know your time is up. The questions that we were asked by the commissioner, they were great.
Okay.
You know, and you great answer.
Thank you for your comment.
Sure.
Leslie,
I have the list again.
I'm sorry. Please state your name for the record and you're gonna have 3 minutes.
Leslie O'Shaughnessy, I live at 7389 Blaine Road. My property abuts the current Birch Bay urban growth area. And is part of study area number 6, being included into the Birch Bay Urban Growth Area Reserve, UGA Reserve. I'm here to state my husband and I are against including study area 6 in the Birch Bay UGA Reserve. We moved from Bellingham to live in a rural environment. We purchased our property in 2020 and in August of 2022 began the process of getting a shop built. Whatcom County agreed to allow us to build a shop on if we put a conservation easement on our property because we're in the Drayton Harbor watershed and are on wetland. We filed the conservation easement in April of 2023. We understood that this conservation easement was in perpetuity tied to our property deed. We cannot build any other permanent structures on our property. I don't understand why our property that cannot be developed would be included in a UGA reserve. How do you plan on getting around this easement? This proposal does not take our conservation easement into consideration. Another issue is we currently receive our water through Bell Bay Jackson Water Association and are very happy with the association and have no interest in receiving water from Birch Bay Water and Sewer District, which seems to be part of this discussion and proposal. Nor do we want to hook into their sewer system. Running their system here in that Reserve Area 6 may be more cost effective for the district, but connecting with the system is not effective for senior citizens on fixed incomes. I'll leave you with quoted comments from the UGA proposal from FutureWise. Page 2 on the letter that they wrote on September 10th. The Birch Bay UGA reserve proposal should be rejected because the urban reserve designations do not serve a useful purpose, encourage premature urbanization of rural areas. On page 9, they state, we're opposed to adding additional urban reserve areas to the Birch Bay urban growth area. They only serve to lead people to believe they may be added someday, but they may not be. Especially if I have my way. They are unneeded and should not be included. And I 100% agree with those sentiments. Thank you for your time.
Can I ask a question?
Yeah.
On our map, it's not designated, area 6, so which area is that?
The one right, I abut the urban growth
It says
area.
the one that's R10A.
Right, and the one they're changing, so that would be added.
Yeah, right.
Yeah.
Showing that's the.
Okay, that one, got you.
And here is they are proposing to add.
Right, I understand that.
When we moved in there was no development and my land now abuts that development, that, what is it called? Whisper Lake. Whisper Lake, I don't even, there's not even a lake. There's, yeah, so, yeah, it's already concerning of the development.
Thank you.
Do you want a copy of what I
Yeah.
Yes, please. Thank you.
Job. Oh, thank you for coming.
Patrick Alessi, I know you spoke earlier. Would you like to speak at this time on the Birch
If you
Bay?
mispronounce the name, it's okay. I told my wife it was LSC
Ellen.
because I didn't want to sound aggressive. LSC. Boy, it's difficult knowing what to talk about. But listen, I'm gonna do, my major thing is, well, where's the map? Okay, Lincoln Road extended to Birch Point. Blaine should not move anything below that Lincoln Road. That drainage is gonna affect everybody and Birch Bay Village. Blaine is pointing at an area for the growth area. But it's not gonna be everyday housing on Birch Point. Gonna be people who have the money. Wow. They should go spend some time a little bit east of Harvey Road, because we can work out time. Now it's wow, because I was talking about, oh, money? No, wealth. You know, I don't have any with me. I carry around little stones with gold on it. And I give it to people. And on the back it says, Birch Bay is more precious than gold. Our environment is so nice, they can actually work to destroy us a little bit. Because we get afraid of, oh, if we become a city, we'll grow, we'll ruin it. But we're ruining it right now. And hold this up. I guess people are sort of talking about how long they've been involved with things. This is 89. My name is actually on that. 92. We had a chance to incorporate Birch Bay. Well, this young lady here complained and fought against it, because she doesn't want any growth. Well, my mother said about growth, crossing your legs does not work. Birch Bay needs to take care of Birch Bay. It's valuable.
Is that?
And we need to do it. We'll sit down.
Anyone in the room wish to speak on Birch Bay UGA? Seeing no one else in the room wishes to speak at this time, we're gonna move to the attendees online. If you would wish to speak on the Birch Bay UGA proposal at this time, please raise your hand. I have Birch Bay Advisory Committee. Go ahead and speak.
Good evening. My name is Doralee Booth. I serve on the new Birch Bay Community Advisory Committee and as a director of the Birch Bay Chamber of Commerce, acting as county liaison. Previously, I was secretary and vice chair of the Birch Bay Steering Committee, which helped develop the Birch Bay Community Plan adopted by Whatcom County in 2004. I have been involved with Birch Bay planning for over 25 years. Blaine's proposal to annex about 1,000 acres of Birch Point would create significant environmental, financial, and community impacts on the Birch Bay UGA. I have a document that lists my key concerns and so many questions. I'm not representing the Birch Bay Advisory Committee tonight. They will be sending a document in later September to the county council in regards to their stance. I have key concerns and so many questions regarding stormwater and water quality. Birch Point is in the Birch Bay watershed and drains into Birch Bay. Downslope stormwater runoff threatens to flood Birch Bay Village, erode the Simiamu Bluffs, and pollute the water quality and the marine ecosystem of Birch Bay. Will multi-million-dollar storm drainage costs fall on Birch Bay residents due to Blaine's attempt to annex Birch Point for development? Regarding transportation, will the annexation of Birch Point overburden Birch Bay, UGA, or future city of Birch Bay with commuter traffic heading for I-5? Blaine's transportation plan wrongly designates Birch Bay Drive, residential and resort corridor, as a major arterial to I-5. Without new connector roads and infrastructure, Birch Bay will be overburdened with traffic. Who will fund these improvements and maintain the roads? Blaine, Whatcom County, or eventually the city of Birch Bay? Is it fair for our community to carry Blaine's infrastructure obligations? Regarding land use, sensitive lands on Birch Point were downzoned and taken out of the Birch Bay UGA in 2004 to protect bluffs, critical areas, and the Birch Point aquifer. Should Blaine's annexation proposal be allowed to undermine years of Birch Bay planning? Is Blaine's jurisdictional overreach creating an environmental risk for the community of Birch Bay? Regarding water and sewer, Birch Bay Water and Sewer District serves the Birch Point area. How will that work for new Blaine sewer infrastructure? Blaine has said that developers will pay for new sewer infrastructure. Does Blaine have documents signed by developers saying they will pay? If developers don't pay, who will? The taxpayers of Blaine? Can the Blaine water aquifer sustain and serve both communities of Blaine and Birch Bay, plus the new annexed land on Birch Point? Regarding emergency services, and I will go on, I will write this document and send it to the Planning Commission. I knew I wouldn't have time, but as long as Blaine is not speaking tonight, we'll have time to send that in later in the month. Thank you so much.
Thank you for your comment. Anyone else attending online wish to speak at this time? Seeing no hands, Chair.
I close the public hearing. Read. We'll get back to this hearing. Somebody put their hand up.
We'll stay. Yep.
Matt, Columbia Valley. Go ahead and take over.
Matt, you're muted.
I've had a few words.
Matt, you're muted.
Okay. Okay, so for the record, my name is Matt Ahmet, representing Planning and Development Services, and we'll be presenting Columbia Valley here. So the Columbia Valley is located between Sumas Mountain and Red Mountain, southeast of Sumas. Columbia Valley was originally developed with several relatively large subdivisions to cater to a seasonal population. However, because real estate prices were affordable, the area became more attractive for full-time residents and has really transitioned to a higher percentage of year-round housing. And the estimated population for 2023 is about 3,577 people. This map shows the current urban growth area in gray and the UGA reserve in crosshatching on the west side. So there are currently 3 zoning districts in the UGA. A lot of urban residential, 4 units per acre. That's most of the UGA. Then we have the general commercial zone here. And in the Foothills Subarea Plan, there's a planned town center that matches this GC zone. And then to the north of Limestone Road, we have rural forestry zoning in the existing urban growth area. And this is in the planned light impact industrial designation in the Foothills Subarea Plan. County Council approved the non-binding resolution in March. The current proposal for Columbia Valley population is 1,137 additional people over the planning period, which runs from 2023 to 2045. And that's consistent with the multi-jurisdictional resolution. And again, like Birch Bay, the proposal extrapolates the average annual population growth in the UGA between 2013 and 2023 to arrive at the new projection, which is about 52 people per year through 2045. The current proposal for Columbia Valley housing growth of 502 additional units over the planning period is also consistent with the resolution, the multi-jurisdictional resolution. And again, this comes from the Planning for All housing tool that was developed by State Department of Commerce and modified by the county's consultant. The current proposal for Columbia Valley employment is growth of 350 additional jobs over the planning period, and that's consistent with the multi-jurisdictional resolution. Although Columbia Valley had 1.5% of the countywide population in 2023, it only had 1/10 of 1% of the countywide jobs. And the Foothills Subarea Plan supports increased job opportunities in the UGA, and this employment allocation was selected to support opportunities for business to locate up there. Okay, so the proposal consists of, there's no changes to the urban growth area boundary. UGA would be changed from UGA Reserve would be changed to rural forestry. That's about 40 acres. And there would also be a rezone of the land from the existing R10A zone to rural forestry, which allows one dwelling per 20 acres. And then land west of State Route 547 or Kendall Road, totaling about 163 acres, would be rezoned from UR4 to urban residential medium density 6 dwellings per acre. And that's to meet those housing targets from House Bill 1220 that come through the Housing for All planning tool. It would provide multifamily opportunities and middle housing opportunities. And then the UR4 zoning text would be amended to allow duplex, triplex, and fourplex. And as mentioned previously, that would apply countywide. Okay, and then 2 parcels west of State Route 547, about 5 acres would be rezoned from UR4, urban residential 4, to general commercial. These are currently split zone parcels. They're partly zoned general commercial and partly zoned UR4, which makes administration of zoning kind of difficult sometimes. And what's that? Okay. And then the Foothills Subarea Plan Map 2.3 would be amended by expanding the existing planned town center to match this revised general commercial zone boundary. And then 40 acres north of Limestone Road in that rural forestry zone would be rezoned to light impact industrial. And then finally, policy CB1/D would be amended to facilitate rezoning of that area to light impact industrial. Okay, so this slide shows the comp plan and zoning changes. As mentioned, there's no urban growth area boundary changes. The existing UGA reserve right over here would be removed from reserve and put in the rural forestry designation, which is adjacent. And that allows, again, one dwelling per 20 acres. This is an area of steep slopes and alluvial fans and landslide hazard areas, etc. So basically, this is basically the base of the mountain, Sumas Mountain over here. And then land west of the road would be rezoned from urban reserve, urban residential UR4 to urban residential medium density 6 units per acre. So that's this area right here. And then the existing general commercial zone, which is here, this area would be tacked on. It's currently UR4, and that would be rezoned to general commercial. Again, that's that place that has a split zone parcel where some of it goes up in here. So it'd be all GC with the rezone. And then the last thing is this area north of Limestone Road would be rezoned from rural forestry to light impact industrial. And again, that's already in the urban growth area. So the land capacity analysis indicates that there is a sufficient land in the existing UGA to accommodate the growth of population. And the land capacity analysis also indicates the existing UGA can accommodate the proposed housing growth projections with two things. One would be the rezoning of land in the urban growth area from UR4 to URM6 to allow multifamily housing, and also amending the UR4 zone to allow those duplex, triplex, fourplex development mentioned earlier. And also the preliminary land capacity analysis indicates the existing UGA can accommodate the proposed employment growth with the potential rezone of approximately 40 acres to light impact industrial in the northern portion of the urban growth area. Okay, so that's it for Columbia Valley.
Go ahead. Mr. Brown.
Matt, just remind me, what's the sewage treatment plant up there? Where does the wastewater go and what's the capacity relative to what you're talking about?
We have a drain field type system with, I think, clarification ponds and so forth. Let me bring this back up here. They are updating their sewer plan at the current time. And let's see here. Yeah, so the exact boundaries. So the sewer plan or the sewer plant serves basically this area here, Water District 13.
We can't see it.
We can't see it.
Okay. So there's two water districts here. Water District 13, which actually has water and sewer. And that serves this area. Most of the undeveloped land is served by Water District 13. And there's been some new development, new land divisions up here, which are served by that system. And then all this vacant land is served by that system. So that's Water District 13. Columbia Valley Water District serves this existing development here and also down here. So, yeah.
Do they have their own individual drain fields in the old area?
Yeah.
Upper area?
Here and here.
Because they're microscopic lots, but
Yeah, they're pretty small.
I mean, is there any question as to whether there's adequate sewer capacity? Because it's
Well, right now, their plan is not, it's like from 2012.
We have a point of order.
Point of order, it was my understanding that we would do the public hearing and then the commissioners would ask questions. But he asked for questions. You made a mistake. You gotta be careful. What you do out here. I yield.
Thank you, Commissioner Hampton.
Mr. Fainall, I need to recognize me.
I recognize you. So let's open the public hearing. Eileen, would you take over, please?
Yes. This public hearing is for the Columbia Valley UGA proposal. Would anyone in the room wish to speak at this time? Seeing no one in the room wishes to speak, we'll move to those participating online. Would any of the attendees wish to speak on the Columbia Valley UGA? Seeing no hands, Chair.
Hey, we'll close the public hearing.
We have a bathroom break.
Yeah.
I think we always have a bathroom break anytime you need to go. There's only one bathroom, so we can't do it. You signed for verbally not.
But now I now answer past my question.
Right, I love your questions. I thought they're really good.
Commissioner Masseri, go ahead.
Well, are we gonna go back to start at Sumas or are we gonna stay on Columbia Valley? We're gonna start the work session next, is that right?
Yeah.
I'll wait till
I think we should start at the top, work our way down.
I propose we start with Birch Bay because there are a lot of people here for that. And that way, when we're done with that, they could go home if they wanted. You're welcome
I
to stay.
like you. Yeah.
I would feel- I yield to your suggestion. So our planner is, there's Matt right there. Okay, we have questions for Matt. First page. The questions for people in the room.
I have some questions, but I don't for some other folks to go first to use. Sure. Matt, I had two questions around Birch Bay. One, in general, the UR4 change that's going to be countywide. I assume that only affects unincorporated areas and UGAs especially. Are there UR4 areas that aren't in UGAs?
No.
Okay. In general, I think it's an elegant way to add the necessary amount of housing, not specific to where the UR4 is going, because that I need to look at further. But I do in general like the way the county's approached the UGAs you're looking at from a density point of view, as opposed to thoughts I have around some of the other places that are just expanding in agricultural. Would love to understand with the comments that came in today around the proposed UGA reserve areas, what the thinking is, or if you could expand on the thinking as to why those are the logical areas for future potential expansion if needed.
Yeah, so let me just bring those up real quick here, hopefully real quick. Actually, to start this. Okay, so you can see that again?
Yeah.
Okay. Let's see. Yeah, so, okay, so again, the UGA reserves are here and here proposed. And actually, at first, we were not thinking of adding anything. And in fact, that's what the draft EIS reflected. I guess what got us thinking was the Birch Bay Community Advisory Committee had recommended expanding urban growth area over here. And so we didn't find a necessity to do that based upon the land capacity analysis. So we're kind of trying to, I guess, meet the spirit of the comments. I don't know, Dorley, if you want to weigh in on that, but just kind of recognizing that they were a committee that had been appointed by the county council, and they had recommended, they had reviewed the new sewer study that was done this year by Birch Bay Water and Sewer District, and they made a recommendation to expand UGA over here. So
yeah, when we looked at the Birch Bay Water and Sewer alternates, Birch Bay Water and Sewer has been a wonderful government entity for Birch Bay, and they have run their district incredibly well, as far as I'm concerned. They are being very pragmatic in taking the sewer district any place. Of course, if they decided to take it to Birch Point, Birch Point, it would be, millions and millions of dollars for the taxpayers to pick up. And the advisory appreciated their pragmatic approach to try and do things in a reasonable way so that costs would not rise on Birch Bay residents.
You have more? Commissioner Brown, go ahead.
Matt, you mentioned the land capacity analysis, and you took referring the one from 2016 or the newer version?
yeah, the newer version.
When was that released?
Well, it's a spreadsheet. The results are in this report, or in the proposal that we sent you. Yeah, if you want the spreadsheet, I can send that too.
Yeah, because I will come back with a question, not now, but a question on how we calculate the available land based on the critical areas.
Yes. Right.
Sorry. We have more questions for Matt. Commissioner McCary.
Yeah, the change down there from URM 6 to ROS zoning.
Mm-hmm.
You just don't have ROS zoning in the
permanent densities in the UAGA chart?
There are no densities.
Yeah, it doesn't allow, this is recreation and open space like parks and stuff like that that don't allow single family or residential development.
Might be nice still to list it though. Because I was confused while I kind of thought through all that.
Okay.
How much, Matt, how much of that is the state park?
All of them.
Oh, yeah.
Commissioner Clark, go ahead.
I'll go, Commissioner Olson. You asked a question.
Well, okay, I'll have another one on Columbia Valley when we get back to that, but given the response, the landowners in these proposed expansion areas, and given the discrepancy between the level of population growth in a interjurisdictional resolution and the perhaps more accurate medium projection, what is so important that this area gets larger instead of getting more dense?
Yeah. Again, we were just trying to take into consideration the Birch Bay Community Advisory Committee's spirit of their recommendations. Again, this is not needed now, but it kind of would set the stage for, at the next update or whenever, and from now and between that, that could be considered for urban growth. It could be considered if it wasn't UGA reserved too. But it's just kind of trying to, recognize this committee was appointed by the county council. We want to, listen to, try to listen to their recommendations.
Comment here.
No, we don't. Yes.
Commissioner Terry, go ahead.
Yeah, Matt, I think it was even said by I forget the name, I apologize, the representative of the Birch Bay Advisory Committee, that it wasn't a long time to review and that maybe they didn't have the best outreach during that time. I'm wondering if maybe they could continue that outreach and maybe get more feedback from the community and landowners in that area, and maybe they could propose if they still want to recommend those areas, or if there's other areas they think will have more community support. Is that a request we could ask of them?
Dorley, do you have any comments on that? Or? You're muted there.
I've had a comment that I've talked to you before, and I think that in our planning in past years, we don't have any light industrial land. Is that right in our UGA?
That's correct.
And that's a big deal because we need economic development in Birch Bay. And we have for many years felt that maybe out along Kickerville Road would be a place for that. So I think in some ways, isn't that one over there that is R10 now? Is
this
that
Kickerville? Yeah, right
yeah,
there.
that's Kickerville. We are going to be wanting to work with the Port of Bellingham, talking about economic development. They do that for the cities, but they haven't done it for Birch Bay, and it's high time. You saw the number of jobs that are in Birch Bay. It's really sad, and it's a beautiful place to live, and we feel like some light industrial would be just wonderful to come into our community. So we need the land for that.
Yeah, and I think, I've talked to Mark a little bit about this. That would probably be a future update. The EIS has been done and that wasn't included, but that might be a good, if you incorporate, then the city could look at that. If you don't incorporate, then we could, the sub-area plan is quite old. It's what, 20 years or something. That might be a good, update process of the council funded, that in the next few years. But yeah, for this update, it's probably too late in the process, with SEPA being completed and everything. But yeah, this would set the stage for future consideration, though.
Commissioner Terry.
So what I heard is that we don't want to ask the committee doesn't want to maybe engage with the public a little more and look at alternative options. Is that true?
No, that's not true. But you must realize we have no budget. we do advertise our meetings, and Ruthie, who presented from the reserve area that doesn't want to join in, our meetings are held right across the street from her property on Thursdays, the fourth Thursday of the month. So we're trying to get our information out several different ways, but we have no ability to. We have an official website on the county dock, and so people need to fish around. I'm sorry, that's just the way it works.
Commissioner Bright.
So, Matt, I just want to confirm my understanding. One, you designate something UGA reserve its lines on a page. It doesn't actually do anything. In this case, it's redesignating zoning to R10. So there is actual change, but not from a growth point of view. So I want to confirm that understanding. But could make things different in future and lines it up, and I get that. I guess my second just thing I want to confirm is that it sounds like the discussion around the sewer system, they're basically looking at it and saying, okay, these would be areas be relatively convenient and contiguous to include and make those costs more reasonable to spread across a larger group than it would be to expand in a non-contiguous, or in this case, almost looks like there's kind of a middle enclave there. And maybe that's the underlying reason that this is being kind of recommended. And I just want to, I'm not saying I agree with that or not. I'm just curious if I'm getting my understanding.
Yeah. So they looked at the Birch Bay Water and Sewer District, looked at other areas, and can't remember, I think one was up here, maybe one was up here, and then down here, and this was the least cost option. But if that's the only thing we had, we probably wouldn't, recommend these. It was, that, and the Birch Bay Community Advisory Committee said we'd like the county to expand the urban growth area over in this area. Well, because of the land capacity results, we didn't really find a need to do that. And if UGAs are oversized, then, the growth board, somebody can appeal, the growth board gets involved, and there've been a lot of growth board cases, including in Whatcom County, like back in 2010, that said, you can't oversize your urban growth area. So it's just the urban growth area reserve is in chapter 2 of the comp plan, and it came about, I think, originally some in 2009-10 vicinity, some urban growth areas were downsized, and there was kind of some appeals and stuff. But when area was taken out of UGA, it was often put in UGA reserve, kind of signaling, hey, this might be a place that we want to look for future urban growth area expansion when needed. So it just kind of is a signal, really, to, look, if you need UGA expansion, look in these areas. Doesn't mean it has to be expanded in those areas, but it's a place to look in the future.
Well, just a minute. Something I wanted to find out. So some of the public have been raising their hands. Some of them may have knowledge that's important. As a chair, I'm most likely not going to call on you, but the members here, the committee members, planning commission members, you are able to ask a question of the citizen if you believe they have knowledge that would create that information to help us. I just want to know, when you raise your hand, I won't call on you, but the commissioner can. Thank you. Thank you. So, go ahead. Commissioner Dunn.
Yeah, Matt, so look at the UGARs. I understand the sort of desire to say, hey, we're gonna kind of like point growth this direction. But that's designation that could be taken in 10 years or in 20 years. Is that correct?
Yeah, I mean, from a county perspective, the GMA requires us to do this update every 10 years. So we'll do another update, in 2035. There's kind of a 5-year review of housing and climate and that kind of stuff that could point to, hey, maybe growth is going faster than you need or something like that. But from our perspective, it's probably more of a 10-year, look. Or if Birch Bay incorporates, right, they get to do their own planning. I mean, still out in the county would have to approve these, but they could, propose UGA expansions or that type of thing. A citizen could come in, or citizens, and apply, on the annual update to add these areas or any other areas to the UGA. But we get into the same problem that, if the UGA doesn't need that area, it could likely be appealed, and then, we may get a finding of non-compliance from the growth board. That's happened, like I said, in Whatcom County, but in a lot of counties around the state.
So sorry, just a follow-up question. So with that, is there anything bad that happens if we don't include the UGARs? Like, or is there not missed or?
I'm sorry, I missed the first. Is there anything bad if you build there?
Yeah, so like if we don't do the UGARs now, is there anything in your opinion that would be bad that would happen? Like, oh, we didn't designate these and therefore some growth happens in a way that we don't want to, or something else happens?
Yes. So this happened again, if this went back to, I think it was like 15 years ago, maybe, or give or take, with the city planners, they were concerned, they were seeing people subdivide rural areas adjacent to the city or UGA or areas where they might want to grow into 5-acre lots and putting a, expensive home in the middle of 5 acres. And so they were concerned that you're kind of hemming us in, and that's going to hinder future urban development, if it's annexed someday. So yeah, I mean, you get into this is existing R5A. And so this would be rezoned to R10A. Same thing with this area. This is already R10A over here. So I guess the thing is you couldn't, if you can subdivide the parcel under 5A, you might not be able to under 10 acre. So it might limit some development that way. This is already R10 down here.
So just carrying on this conversation. So would it make more sense then to change the zoning of that 5A to 10A?
Yeah, that's what we're proposing. So if this goes in the UGA reserve, that's what we're proposing as a companion amendment. This is already in the UGA reserve over here. The comp plan says it should be 10 acre instead of 5 acre. Oops. 10 acre instead of 5 acre. So I don't know why that, didn't get changed, but it didn't. So.
Commissioner Hampton.
So what I gather is there will be nothing to stop us in modifying chapter 2 from changing that zoning without designating it as urban growth reserve areas, right?
Yeah, you could do that.
Okay.
And that would keep it as the kind of rural character, or not rural character, but it's the more of the current character.
More protected,
yeah.
Commissioner Masseri.
Seems like there's a less of a justification for why you're doing that if you're not gonna keep it, if it's not in the UGA reserve, right? Now you're just downzoning people's property with no justification. And if the justification is that you might include it later, why didn't you include it as a UGA reserve if that's what you're considering? So I'd say it does come across a little differently.
That is a good.
Matt, I've got a question for you. And some of the people in this room attended the community meetings that we are having every month and did it for years. And we met with the planning director, Al Hart, and we discussed a whole lot of these issues here. And when people kept talking about the Blaine expansion, the reason that resonates so much with the Birch Bay residents is we had conversations about it, and where the dividing lines were going to go. And that's why you kept hearing it tonight, is we had those discussions, and the kind of the general consensus, to the best of my recollection, is about where the water goes either north or goes south. That's why you kept hearing it tonight. So what I'm asking, Matt, are there any of those notes around from that time?
We have no idea. I haven't seen them, but.
I don't, Nick, can you ask her to stop? Please. I have an answer to that question.
Go ahead.
I will yield to
The Birch Bay Community Plan from 2004 references a lot of that information, and it is adopted as the sub-area plan and in the comprehensive plan for Birch Bay, and it addresses a lot of that information. And then the follow-up to that area is, I know Ruthie's right there on the corner, and I can respect that. However, the church is the little knob on the other side, and they want in, and they have a fabulous facility that they let the community use. And they would like to be in the UGA and be a part of Birch Bay. There's some other developable property there that butts right up against where the URM6 is, the Baycrest neighborhood with over 400 homes that were built. There's a lot of people that live right there. They don't use Birch Bay Linden Road. They use Bay Road and Grandview to go out. So for more than half the population of Birch Bay, that's their entrance to town. That's where they come home. They don't go to Blaine to shop. They go to Ferndale or Bellingham or whatever. So I think that's part of that other idea of that being in. And the one landowner, I believe that she talked to who wants in, has the parcel that backs up against Baycrest, and they're advertising it as developable property, because they want in. So there, and then the land capacity analysis, we haven't seen the new land capacity analysis, but I have grave concerns about that because of the critical areas and things like that, and the wetlands that you spoke about.
Yeah, that's right, on the north side of that.
Those are the things I need to let you guys know.
Oh, thank you. Very useful. Thank you.
Yes, so that's all wetlands.
Yeah, so Matt, a question what I'm thinking about, like what we're talking about here, I think there's sort of part of it is like what people would like in terms of what they want their homes or properties to be around. And there's also what the RCW requires. And so when I put on my planning commission hat and say, let's try and make a comp plan that's resistant to an appeal. My understanding is that the comp plan requires you to have a UGA that can accommodate the growth, and the new things are housing and climate. It sounds like what you're saying is the existing UGA can accommodate the growth. Is that correct?
Yes.
Okay. Okay, so I think it puts a little bit of for me, a little bit of hesitancy is like, well, if we're accommodating the growth from just straight up from the RCW perspective, then maybe that's what we should do.
Yeah, and that relates to the UGA. So, the UGA reserve isn't really factored in. It's just a designation. So the land capacity analysis doesn't really have a bearing on these. Yeah.
And then my other question, I guess, would be City of Sumas and Everson Nooksack talk a lot about water and flooding in their presentation. There's a lot of questions about where the appropriate development is for that. We haven't talked about that here. The map that we're looking at here, it looks like there's an ocean flood zone and perhaps a river flood zone in there. Could you talk about those flood zones, those map overlays, and how they affect development in Birch Bay?
Yeah, so the sea level rise, there's two things here. Potential sea level rise. This is a medium scenario of 3.3 foot sea level rise, along with a 20-year storm. So if that were to occur, then these areas would be flooded. And then there's the effective flood zone, which is coastal flood zone, and Terrell Creek's got a little bit too, but it pretty much matches. There's small deviations between the sea level rise scenario and the existing coastal flood area here. So as far as the new designations go, I don't know if you can see it very well, but this sea level rise area sneaks right into here to a small amount of this UGA reserve. But for the most part, this reserve would be outside of that, and this one would be outside of it too. There are existing zones. There's quite a bit of development in some of these areas that are in the flood area right now. The county built a berm. There could be other mitigation scenarios that, as we get into the climate issues a little bit more, potentially, the options are, elevating more, or, the county had got some funds for buyouts in some places in the small cities. There's probably a variety of things that could be looked at there. But as far as here, zoning goes, as far as the addition area, well, right, this wouldn't be right now, but in the future, that's the only area that would be affected by the flood.
So Sue asked, like, their justification for adding land to the west is basically it's up the hill, that's out of their flood zone. Would that be a justification? So they kind of want to move some of the population from the flood areas up the hill. Would that be a justification here for the UGAR, or potential in the future UGA would be to remove people from the downtown core area up to the uplands?
Yeah, this is going to be a tough nut to crack because there's a whole bunch of development right now, and I think the county council is going to have those discussions on what can be done there, and planning commission too, at some point when we look at the regulatory part of this to implement and try to, implement the new policies that will be put in the comp plan. So yeah, there is, some of it's seasonal in here and stuff, but yeah, there's a lot of development in there already. So yeah, that's going to be definitely an issue that will have to be looked at. But we're not proposing any changes to the zoning in these areas except for UR4, which right now allows single family, and this would allow duplex, triplex, fourplex. But not only, I think this is, yeah, Birch Bay Village is already developed out pretty much. There's a lot there in the sea level rise area. I'm just trying to look. This is Double R Ranch. There's a vacant parcel here, and I think it clips the corner of that. Yeah.
Commissioner Wright.
Might have missed this at the start. Are we taking action on these today? Or okay. Are we making motions for changes, or are we just chatting and that comes later?
I think this is an opportunity for you to ask questions of the staffs that are here from the cities and the county. So we won't have that availability all the time. So I would encourage you to use that time. Great.
Could I make a question? This is Charlie.
If someone calls on you.
Nick?
Matt, for the record, for Birch Bay and for all the others, the numbers we're seeing are based, the capacity to accommodate growth, as I understand it, is based on the state formula for looking at vacant land or land that is underutilized and saying what its capacity for accommodating growth. Is that correct?
Yeah, the state came out with a guidebook a long time ago, and we've had a land capacity analysis, going back, 15 years. I think it's been updated and tweaked and so forth. The latest, well, basically, yeah, we have our GIS people identify land that's vacant, or just has a minor, like a shed on it or something like that. Partially used, which would be like a 20-acre parcel that could be subdivided, but it's only got one house on it now, or underutilized. Maybe you have a house on a commercial property. So those three categories are identified and kind of put in a spreadsheet, and then deductions are made. And those deductions are for, roads necessary on the property, if it's a subdivision, to serve those new lots. There's wetland deductions. There's what we call quasi public use. That could be a daycare or a church or something like that. There's deductions for market factor, which, somebody owns several lots, maybe they have a house next door, they garden on it, they don't want to sell it, or they're saving it for the grandkids or speculation or whatever. So there's a number of deductions from those acres for the vacant land, partially utilized and underutilized. And generally the market factor for those who have a house on it already that are partially used are higher than for vacant land. And then there's assumptions about density, what density will be built on these lots, because a lot of zoning allows a range of densities, that type of thing. And so then you come out with a capacity for dwelling units. And this LCA, this land capacity analysis, has a whole new section on land by income level. And basically the state has guidance and they equate, I think it was alluded to earlier, multifamily more equates to lower incomes, maybe duplex, triplex, fourplex, that middle type, maybe to moderate incomes and accessory dwellings, and then single families kind of equated to higher income. And somebody mentioned that doesn't always work out that way, because there's high rises in Bellingham that have a view that are not low income housing, but that's kind of the general theme of it.
So each jurisdiction has made all the deductions that you've just talked about.
Mm-hmm.
Correct?
Yes. So we have a whole methodology, which we brought to you earlier, and then the county council, we did a briefing with them. But so everybody's supposed to, and we have an associated spreadsheet that the consultant modified from one before. And there's spaces in there. There's a whole column for, wetland deductions. There's a column for market factor deductions, for infrastructure deductions, all of that, for putting in your density. So there's kind of a very standard format, but the assumptions are made by the jurisdictions, or the, yeah.
Thank you. I want to commend Commissioner Brown on asking a global question and remind us all that we have 4 other jurisdictions that we need to ask questions about in 40 minutes, and maybe we can move it on.
Yeah, Mark, you said you weren't planning to have us make any suggestions on anything tonight, just ask questions. When do you expect us to actually have discussions on recommendations on what we got in front of us?
So we've got this meeting tonight. We've got another meeting on the 25th here from the other cities.
Yeah.
And then we've got the meeting on the 30th, which will be a follow-up on climate chapter 12, as well as continued discussion on the UGA proposals. And then you've got the joint meeting next week on the UGA proposals with the council to talk about this stuff. And then we're gonna have a big hearing at the end in November, December, where you're gonna make a final decision on the entire comp plan. That's when you'll make final decisions on the entire comp plan. So if you wanna make preliminary decisions along the way.
I'm just saying, it sounds like we're gonna have, we've already had multiple meetings on this, sounds like we're gonna have more meetings on this. At some point, we either make changes or don't, I guess, so.
Yeah, so you're getting more specific information from the cities and from the county staffs as we go along here, right? We went through the draft GIS, you had a bunch of alternatives, then we got a preferred alternative, now we're refining the preferred alternatives here. This is your opportunity to ask questions of the staffs about that stuff, so before you make your final recommendation.
Matt, I got a question for you about how you're counting people. Like in the past, I've seen the math for how we're figuring out densities, mostly with the buildable land report. But these numbers look a little bit different. And then in the agenda packet today, I didn't see, like I saw the number, like here's the number we want to use. I didn't see the math behind the number, like here's how we got there. Is it possible to see that math? And the reason I'm asking is that in the buildable land report, this is from 2022, so it's a while ago, but it says Birch Bay UGA estimated land capacity population growth about a bunch of acres, Anyways, in this one, it says Birch Bay UGA has an estimated population capacity of 2,950, indicating an estimated population capacity deficit of 1,254 for the 2021 to 2036 time period. So that's probably out of date from 3 years ago, but that was the land capacity analysis that came off the building methodology that we just kind of reviewed recently. Long-winded way of asking, can you show us math?
Yeah, there's a whole big spreadsheet I can send you.
That'd be great.
Okay. Does anybody else want the spreadsheet or just Dan?
It does.
Yep.
What's that?
Can you send it to all of us, please?
Yeah, yeah. Yeah, I mean, the buildable lands, I mean, there's two sides to the deficit, surplus equation. One is, what's allocated, what you need to provide, and then the other side is the land capacity. And also, in the buildable lands, we had to use achieved densities that had occurred over the last 5 years. Like this one, we can use assumed densities. I think some cities may be proposing minimum densities, because in the past you could have a 4 unit per acre zoning, but you didn't have to build to that. You could build 2 units per acre or whatever, and that can drag down achieved densities. And I think there's some cities at least that are proposing minimum densities, like you have to do at least 4 or 6 units per acre or whatever it may be. So there are probably some different assumptions that go into this one, and there are two sides to that surplus deficit equation.
I guess my last question is, I don't know, Kelvin, maybe you give us some background. Just like I understand there's conflict between sort of Birch Bay and Blaine. We're not talking about Blaine tonight, but we're at that boundary between the two. It seems like there's sort of a jurisdictional control. There's some land up on the hill there, and Birch Bay wants it and Blaine wants it. Can you maybe give me a couple minutes, like the elevator speech background, just like Like, what's the background there? Like, why do both groups want it?
I don't know that I can speak for either group, but this used to be in the Birch Bay UGA. Oops, and it was oversized. I think this area used to be in the Blaine UGA, so this was downsized, and I think there was some area removed from up here and so forth. Other than that, the history, again, that might be to the community and the advisory committee and so forth. I think Kelvin spoke to that a little bit. There have been discussions about the watershed boundaries and so forth, but just from a pure planning perspective, both of these UGAs used to be a lot bigger.
Yeah, and to Matt's point, right, there's been a lot of litigation over these, right? So the UGAs have to be sized, I call it the Goldilocks scenario. They have to be just right, right? Not too hot, not too cold, not too big, not too small. And that's what the land capacity analysis does to make sure the population allocations and employment allocations balance the land capacity analysis, and we kind of come up with a math that says, yeah, we're pretty good, right? We're not too big. In the past, previous county councils have oversized those UGAs. We get appealed, we go to court, and then the hearings board and court say, yep, you got to shrink the UGAs, and so it's a constant struggle, right, over the decades, really, but since the GMA has been involved. So we've learned our lesson, so we try to keep these strategic in terms of any proposed improvements or expansions.
Commissioner Gripe, you had your hand up.
Yeah, a global question. I'm not sure who I'm directing it to. Someone in planning. You guys can decide who's gonna respond. Looking at the way the multi-jurisdictional plan is allocating population and employment, I'm curious because this predates. I only joined this commission in, I guess, January or February. Curious what the logic was around how much population and employment we're putting in places like Everson and Nooksack and Columbia Valley. They read quite high to me. I think it's 55% growth in most of those places in the next 20 years. I think Birch Bay is 25. I'm sure others are somewhere in between. I'm just trying to understand, like, considering I think and Matt, seeing the way you've approached the UGAs that are not part of the cities we've addressed today, where it's mostly been infill as a way to, create the housing versus expansion of the UGA boundary. I'm just curious why the numbers seem so high in those communities, and if, especially on the employment side, if we even think those are realistic, because they, on their face, it feels unrealistic to me.
Those were proposed by the cities, and they came through the planning commission last, I think it was November, December. And the planning commission couldn't come to a majority vote. They went on to council, all the cities and the county presented before council. This is our proposal for population, housing, and employment, and to the county council. And so the county council passed that resolution without any changes to what the county had proposed and the cities for their jurisdictions. I think with employment, there is verbiage in the comp plan that talks about, for last time, from 2016, talks about these may be optimistic, but they allow opportunity. Some cities want to recruit businesses, recruit industry. And if you have a low, or even medium projection, I guess under planning, you don't have to necessarily repeat past patterns. Like up at Columbia Valley, for example, there's basically no employment up there, very little. And so, if we went forward projecting on that same basis, we would not have the zoning to try to, facilitate additional development. So I think that was kind of the thought on the employment side.
Well, I'll add into, you heard from several city planners tonight that their towns are really growing quickly, much faster than they had anticipated. And that's primarily because they're more affordable than it is to develop in, for example, Bellingham. So we're seeing changes in those trends. And like Matt said, just because we grew this way for the last 20 years doesn't mean we have to grow that way for the next 20 years. The other thing is with 1220, with having to accommodate higher densities, and which translates into higher population needs and allocations. And it also means from the HB 1181, the climate change requirements, that we're increases in vehicle miles traveled, if everybody was gonna come to Bellingham, that only increases vehicle miles traveled as opposed to dispersing that growth and having better jobs, housing balances in all of those communities. So there's, folks who live in Nooksack can work in Nooksack, and folks who live in Everson can work in Everson. So that's why I think that's driving a lot of that. But it's not, maybe hasn't been the trend in the past, but.
Yeah, I just want to remind us all that our job is to try to plan for a future in which it isn't just randomly determined by people's inclinations, that we need to figure out ways to incentivize people to go and live where it's most appropriate for them to live, and disincentivize people going where it's least appropriate for them to move. So I think this passive, well, this is what people want to do, we just have to accommodate it, isn't really our job.
Commissioner Dunn. Could I suggest 8:30 or so, we got the other folks on the line, how do we feel about moving on from Birch Bay, maybe going to Sumas? Yep. I've got a question for Sumas.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thanks, guys. Go ahead. Here. Here. Okay, Carson, you still, hey, there you are. How's it going, Carson?
I'm doing all right.
All
about
right,
you
so you
guys?
sound good. So I think I feel like the main concerns with Sumas are, both like a relatively high allocation population, which is in line with multi-jurisdictional, but I think still number might be a little surprising to some people. And then also that we're putting, it looks like kind of some UGAs into the floodplain, but also some of them out of the floodplain. So maybe could you address, you kind of already did, maybe in a little more detail, could you address your population allocation first? Why'd you pick that number? Where's the growth that you see for the future? And then secondarily, if you could address kind of why you're doing some of the UGAs that are in the floodplain as opposed to only doing the ones up on the hill.
Sure, let me get my screen pulled up again. Okay, so the population growth proposal. This population growth proposal, a lot of it was driven from what we're seeing in terms of a lack of capacity in city limits for new residential growth. We just don't really have any left. So all of our any new growth, what was I trying to say? Sumas has been growing quite a bit. This 1,000 population number is the same amount that we've grown since the GMA was passed in 1990. So if for a small town like Sumas, we've been growing pretty steadily, and we think that we're going to continue to grow steadily, provided that we have the land for it. So it sounds like a big number, but in reality, it's actually less of a higher rate than we have seen since the GMA was passed in 1990. So we're confident that that's still going to continue. We need the land to accommodate it.
Oh, and then sorry, the second part of my question, the UGA that's down in the floodplain that you're kind of explaining, I don't know, maybe pull up the map, look at that. So the maybe the previous map that we're looking at.
Yeah, it doesn't have the floodplain, but you can see the areas.
Oh, yeah, but the four parcels down there. Like tell me about the need for that. Could you just exclude those, put them back to ag land?
Yeah, so the idea behind the southward expansion area was to match where historic growth has been occurring. A lot of Sumas's recent growth has been towards the south. It makes sense, it's along the highway. And then we were also looking to expand our commercial base. And always the best place to expand commercial base is along a highway or a highly trafficked road. So we wanted to ensure that we could provide more commercial growth out there, and then it's also flat land, so it makes for easy development. But then once we got more into floodplain planning, and especially when FEMA came out with these draft floodplain maps that aren't official, but they are the ones being considered by FEMA that show more floodplain in the southward area, that's when we started to go, okay, maybe it's not the greatest choice to go in that direction, but we wanted to wait to take it out until until that was needed. We wanted to keep that door open. So that's why it's still there.
Commissioner Park.
Two questions for you, Carson.
Yeah.
One, all the population growth since 1990, where would you say, most of those folks are working? Like, where's the employment going for the folks that are new residents? And then my second question is, considering the, significant ag land expansion, what consideration and work was done to look at infill upzoning within the current UGA?
Yeah, so a lot of the people that work in Sumas, or a lot of people that live in Sumas, either work in Sumas out in the industrial district, or they work in Everson or Linden. So it's all in the relatively same area, but it is outside of town. Sumas is a bedroom community with a new industrial area that was created in the 90s. So there's still a lot of population that work outside of town. And then talk a little bit about the agricultural expansion. You asked about upzoning. Sumas has done quite a bit of upzoning since the 2009 plan is, I believe, when Sumas started to look at doing a little bit more multifamily development, especially on the south side of town. This road, Front Street, is also State Route 547 that goes up into Columbia Valley. So a lot of the development south of that has been fourplexes, apartments, triplexes, multifamily as more as dense as Sumas is willing to go. And so a lot of Sumas residents kind of feel that we've done enough of that, and they want us to build more single family residents because their communities are turning into apartment communities that have historically been single family. So we're getting a lot of pushback on any new multifamily development. So it's a balancing act that we're trying to figure out between how much multifamily do we accommodate versus what the community actually wants. Which is why we're also looking at expanding our area, because the developed land in city limits is not really looking at being upzoned to that much of an extent. At most, upzoning that occurs in Sumas is duplexes, triplexes, and maybe a fourplex, but that's pretty rare. So it's not much of an upzone.
Got it, thanks.
Commissioner Hampton.
Well, I may be as kind of a simple person, but I'm a person who pays the flood tax. And I'm wondering why, when your whole city's in the bottom of a historic lake, why you're not thinking of figuring out how to move some people up into that higher ground rather than moving more people in?
Well, I think first off, I've Sumas being in a historical lake, I've heard before. It's not the Sumas Lake was up in BC, quite a ways away. Anyway, the people that live in Sumas don't want to move. They want to stay. They know there's a flood risk. They don't care. They want to stay. So, as much as we might want them to move uphill, we can't force them. What we can do is provide buildable land that, if they want to move, they can. So it's what a government is morally allowed to do. So we can bring the horse to water, which is what we're trying to do, but we can't make them drink.
Commissioner Dunn.
I think one argument in defense of, the UGA, especially to the west, would be to keep downtown Sumas core area as low density as possible. Maybe even having a density ceiling, which is sort of the opposite of what you'd have in most UGAs, in order to encourage less growth and less housing in that city area, and encourage more growth and more housing up the hill, like outside of the area. So I think because I think one of the arguments is, well, you've already got, a UGA, you've got, facilities and services, so you should be building apartment buildings and towers and things downtown there. But obviously with the flood situation, like you don't want, like nobody wants that to happen. So I think having some kind of a cap, maybe having a cap there, or at least having that as justification for wanting to put people uphill would be so you can have less people living in that historic flood zone.
Absolutely.
Commissioner Brown?
Yeah, I guess in defense for those that are living in the floodplain at the moment, they don't really have the economic ability to just write off their existing investment and move.
Yeah.
As far as the flood tax, by the way, we all pay it, and it's not typically money that's used to support flood victims. It's used to build, dikes and levees and stuff like that, and manage the direction of the Nooksack River.
Yep.
Commissioner Dunn?
My guess is that if our plan gets appealed, it'll probably be Future Wise who appeals it, which is reasonable. And so I think maybe we could address some of their comments, their written comments, just kind of briefly here, just so we can start having that discussion. So when it comes up later, we kind of know where we're going. You want to stick around for this, Fred? Okay, so their first comment is City Sumac to expand urban growth area into agricultural lands. The proposal does not include a comprehensive county-wide analysis of agricultural lands, showing that these lands do not qualify as agricultural lands of long-term commercial significance. So do we have a map of agricultural lands of long-term commercial significance? And are the lands that are up the hill, are those on that map, Mark?
Yeah, I'll answer that, at least part of that. The county staff is conducting a countywide analysis, assessment of agricultural resource lands as an outcome of these proposed now. Now that we've the cities and the county have finalized our UGA proposal. Now we have better numbers about how many acres of ag land are proposed to be converted from ag to UGA or UGA reserve. So our staff is looking at that, is conducting that analysis, and we will bring that to you hopefully late October, early November, based on these proposals. So we'll have an idea. We've already been talking with the city planners, and you heard some proposals from them already about potential mitigation options to mitigate for that loss of ag land. And we'll bring those different options and recommendations to you guys.
So just theoretically, does this seem feasible?
Oh, theoretically. Hypothetically.
Hypothetically.
Yeah.
Commissioner Brown?
So if I've caught this at the right inflection, I did send you guys, I looked at the RCWs and the WACs that they were referring to. And I sent you copies of these, and I've highlighted in yellow what they said, what they were referring to. And then I've highlighted in blue, I think, other things that are relevant to their argument. The one on the it said forest land and agricultural land located within urban growth areas shall not be designated by a county or city as forest land or agricultural land, unless the county or city has enacted a program. Now, this doesn't actually speak to what they're saying. If you read it carefully, it doesn't actually support their argument.
If ag land within a UGA shall not be designated by a county as ag land and long-term commercial significance. Yeah, that's different than what.
Yeah, this is saying it's ag land that is already within the UGA. And they're talking about ag land that is going to go into the UGA.
Yeah, so there's an interesting distinction here between the comprehensive plan land use designation and zoning, right? Those are two different things. Sometimes they're similar, they're kind of the same, but quite often they're not, right? So under GMA, the comp plan designation of agriculture is on green on the map. Those are ag lands of long-term commercial significance under GA. That's the green designation. But when you become a UGA, then you're changing that to pink, to urban growth area. And that's now the comprehensive plan land use designation. So you have to go through that de-designation process and say, yes, we now think this land is more appropriate for the jurisdiction. Has to say, we believe this land is now more appropriate for urbanization than it is for agriculture. So that's part of the analysis we have to do, and the city has to do to warrant that. What they're proposing here is to keep probably agricultural zoning on that property, but have it be designated in the comp plan as UGA, which is not what that particular plan speaks.
Right, yeah, well, and that's my point, is that their letter is making the wrong reference, wrong references to the law.
Right.
Right. And one of the other things on that same sort of topic, which also tied in with SUMAS, is they're saying, well, you can't do this because of the climate element. You know, you can't make these proposed changes because of the climate element. And they gave an example of section D subsection I of it's on this one in 3678.070, and I've highlighted this. If you read below what is used as a reference, it also says a jurisdiction may not restrict population growth or limit population allocation in order to achieve the requirements set forth in the climate section. So I actually don't think their argument is valid from a legal perspective.
And I just want to let you know, on at your September 30th work session, when Lauren Clemens is back to talk about the climate element, she'll talk about that. Right. She'll talk about what 1181 requires, does it require, regarding UGA expansions. She's also been very monitoring the Commerce is going through rulemaking, they call rulemaking, which is the WACS, the Washington Administrative Code process to update the climate rules for jurisdictions to implement. We operate under the interim because we're 25 county. We're the first county to implement 1181. We are under the interim guidance, and now Commerce is doing final guidance, and so it's kind of a moving target, but they've assured us that we will operate and be evaluated under the interim guidance. So we're following the guidance that was provided to us by Commerce on this stuff.
To that point, when she was here last time, she was saying that the WAC or the interim guidance or whatever said we had to consult with every tribe in the nation. And that was the law, and I can't find the law that supports that. So I hope she either provides evidence or acknowledges that's not the law.
So global question again. If we were to, in any of these growth management areas, say, no, we don't want to agree to expand into any given space, ag land or otherwise, and thus the population housing analysis would then not meet the allocations from the multi-jurisdictional, whatever that plan's called. What happens? Do the cities have to go back to the drawing board and figure it out within their current boundaries? Are we just out of compliance? Like, what is the outcome of that?
Yeah, that's a good question. It's a combination of those things. We have to be, the law requires our plans, the city and the county plans, to be coordinated and consistent. And the county council adopts the final UGA boundaries. So if we adopt a boundary that's inconsistent with the city boundary adopted in their plan, that's an inconsistency, and that's get both of us out of compliance pretty quickly. So that's why this coordination has to be so closely done and coordinated. But yeah, that's an outcome, is that if the council decides, or you guys recommend that, don't want that, then the cities would have to amend their targets, their population targets, and their GA proposals to match that.
Just a curiosity, there was talk about having to extinguish some development rights to be allowed to have access to that proposed western urban growth area reserve. And I'm just curious why. I mean, isn't there a road that goes there? I mean, why does it have any relationship to the other urban growth area that actually is in the floodplain?
Carson, you wanna address that?
I can do as much as I can. Well, I guess the idea is to not put more development into the floodplain, putting more people at risk. Now, I mean, we can say all day long that we don't plan on allowing that to happen, but there's nothing official that's tying us to that. So this is a way that it's beyond just us saying it, is that it actually cannot happen. I don't know if there's any more comment from Matt or Mark about that, but
Yeah, one of the other creatures of the GMA is that the UGAs have to be contiguous. So they gotta connect to the existing city. So, and that floodplain is right in between that. So they have to cross that floodplain, and then that RCW says you can't expand into a floodplain unless you extinguish those rights. So that's what several of the cities were talking about, where they do a restrictive covenant with that property owner and say no development is gonna occur in this area, even though it's in the.
Yeah, I feel like this is a theme that's been throughout Sumas, Everson, and Nooksack, and I think it'll come up in other cities, right? Everything that's outside of these boundaries is ag and resource land. There's also wet and floodway, wetlands and floodways everywhere. Either we can expand into it, or you can't expand the city's boundaries at all. In which case, okay, then the only way to achieve more density is, upzoning and multifamily. I think that's a very unrealistic way to think that things will actually play out, because I don't know how many people are going to want to live in large apartment buildings in these smaller cities, right? Because people move out there for being able to afford houses and the lifestyle there, versus, there's benefits, to living in a bigger city like Bellingham that lead itself to those multifamily. So I just think we should be realistic on what, if you force it that way, saying it works on paper and we checked all these boxes, I don't know that you achieve any of your density, right? And then it just keeps inflating housing and land supply.
Commissioner Bright.
Yeah, I mean, I agree with that. I agree with the likely outcomes in this scenario. I think the policy debate, and maybe it's above our pay grade, that's already been had, by county council, is whether or not that outcome is the outcome we want or not. Because I don't know that the amount of growth we're saying should go in these small cities makes sense and is actually optimal from a climate point of view, from just preserving our agricultural lands. Like, I would rather say Ferndale, Linden, Bellingham, like that's where more of that growth should be going. And that's frankly where most of the employment is going and probably will go, whether we try to pretend it's gonna go other places or not. That's my biggest concern, is that it feels to me like we're telling these cities you need to grow more than, from a public policy perspective, we should be. So I think you're absolutely right. Those are the outcomes that we have to debate. I think that's public shares where I feel about this, but that's the broader challenge.
Mark, can the community, or can't we just say you don't have any room to grow, so you're not? If you're going into the floodplain or agriculture or whatever.
Yeah, it's tough for those small towns because they are surrounded by floodplain and ag land, and it's a lot harder to row, right? To grow, and it's absolutely right. I mean, this is still a market determined housing market, and if people don't want to live in high density housing in small towns, then guess where they're going to come? They're going to come out of the county, and then we get too much rural growth above our targets, and then guess we'll get sued, right?
Yeah,
So,
well, and my point is, so one of the, and so we're talking about, and I'm just making this up, but You know, we're saying, okay, Columbia Valley is, it just can't get any bigger than it is. But there's this little corner down here where a bunch of people are starting to live around it, and that grow bigger. And let one of these little communities, if they're maxed out, they're maxed out.
Yeah.
And I think you have your hand up. Go ahead.
I mean, this is, I want us to be realistic about this. Everybody says, oh, we just shove all the growth into Bellingham or cities like Blaine. Well, Blaine's just given up, on allowing a guy who spent, how long had Hertz spent trying to develop Grandis Pond? It was probably close to 20 years. And he just could not get Blaine to get involved in doing the sewer and the water hookup. And that 450 acres that was going to accommodate 1,000 houses is now gone to one guy who's building one house. Now, in Bellingham, there was a petition by people in the UGA in the Northern Heights, Britain Road area. The city council turned down, even though most of the land is already built to urban level of services. So everybody keeps saying, oh, we just shove everything in Bellingham. Bellingham won't take the growth when they get it. Blaine won't take the growth. The cities are not taking it because they're saying the cost to us to bring you in to our standards is too high. And that's why people are going to Sumas and Nooksack and Emerson and Ferndale, because those cities have less expensive options. So we're just driving everybody out. We're not stopping people moving in. We're just driving the people out who can't afford to pay the prices that the people who are moving in are paying.
Commissioner Hampton.
Just a small question, comment, about Columbia Valley, and that is, given no railroad and a 2-lane highway coming back and forth from there, how truly realistic is an industrial park? Go ahead.
No, that's my answer. That's my interpretation.
Okay, yeah. It seems like a pipe dream. You know.
I mean, you're spot on. I wouldn't build a business out there if you gave me the land for free. It's just too expensive.
It's probably more likely to be a resource-based industry, right? Timber or mineral resource industries or rock crushing or something like that, because that resource is there and accessible. But yeah, they're a long way from I-5, they're a long way from markets, so it's definitely more of a challenge.
Commissioner Massard.
I mean, it's also support for those industries too, like it might be a big shop, just service and logging trucks.
That would be great.
That kind of stuff,
Got it. Thanks. Appreciate that.
And I will say, and you heard many of the city planners talk about it, HB 1220, the Housing Affordability Act, is a game changer, and it's brand new this update cycle. So this is everything. This is something new we're all grappling with. But it's basically the Commerce tells us, here's what you're going to do. They're going to equate affordability with density to make it as simple as possible. And say you got to build, you don't have to build, you have to plan for and accommodate zoning that can accommodate those kinds of densities. And whether that happens or not, right, is the great unknown. You guys are talking about that. We won't know that for at least 5 more years, right? At least. Until we see how the market reacts to all that stuff.
But we want your attic at R6.
Yeah.
But if I can just comment on the resource jobs. When I was involved in the discussion about taking the land DNI had and turning it into a park around Lake Whatcom. And the forestry industry was complaining, oh, you're going to kill thousands of jobs. And I had a couple of guys come to me and say, look, realistically, it's 8,000 acres based on an 80-year rotation. And the degree of mechanism now, that 8,000 acres will employ 7 people full time.
Yeah.
That's it.
Yeah.
Yeah, because of everything, I mean, if you've ever seen a fellow bunch of tree machines, some of that, there's very little human interaction anymore. So. Anyways.
We are coming up at 9 o'clock. We're 8:59. I'm looking at the clock. Are we, go ahead.
I just wanted to thank the city planners,
Yeah.
yes, for being available and, if you guys have any other additional questions, let me or Matt know and we can convey those.
I just like to say I really appreciate the professionalism and the detail that you all have gone to in making these presentations. And I think your cities are very lucky to have you working for them.
Yeah. And it's not an easy box that you have to try to paint within the lines that you, that comes from all the different state laws and ways that this kind of gets driven, not necessarily entirely by what's realistic or practical. It's often driven by spreadsheets set, in Olympia, so.
Thank you.
Yeah,
All
thank you
right.
guys.
Okay, meeting is adjourned.
Thank you. Good night.